Yeah, we've got good people. Let's see, we've got the flag. All right, here we go. Good evening. I'd like to call the second session of the annual town meeting to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could just pause for a moment to reflect on the sacrifices being made by our fighting men and women in numerous unpleasant, hostile, highly dangerous places abroad, and send your prayers to them. I think they'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we'll begin with Article 4, the budget article. On the motion, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Maura Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening and welcome back. Plenty of seats. Don't fight over them. I move that the town raise and appropriate $75,530,929 and transfer from the Golf Enterprise Fund $65,211, from the Wastewater Enterprise Fund $241,985, from the Water Department Enterprise Fund $362,939, from the Transfer Station Enterprise Fund $159,419, from the Waterways Enterprise Fund $79,874, from Title V Assessments $6,858, from Debt Premium Reserve $3,082, from the PEG Access Cable Grant $259,501, and transfer from the Wind Turbine Revolving Fund $100,000, and from solar array revenues $100,000 each to the general fund for debt service, and $53,931 from the Massachusetts School Building Assistance Reserve, totaling $76,963,729 for the purpose of funding personnel services and expenses for town operations as may be necessary for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018.
It's been moved, seconded. Discussion. We'll hear from Chairman Curran. We'll hear from Chairman of the Advisory Committee, Mr. Heineman, and then Superintendent Griffin is going to give us a presentation on behalf of the schools. Madam Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This budget seeks to maintain service levels in all areas of town government, with some small additions in staffing where we felt additional help was necessary. To review the budget, we pulled out the shared costs in our debt and interest and have distributed the net available revenues consistent with our policies, with 66.6% going towards the schools and 33.3% going to the town side services. Revenue projections for fiscal year 19 are conservative estimates based on the financial forecasting model, which is a joint exercise including all impacted parties, including the schools, town, advisory, capital planning, and the assessors. We are not using any free cash to support the operating budget. We are not tapping into any stabilization reserves to support the operating budget. The budget continues to fund $400,000 in foreshore protection and $400,000 allocated to road repairs, as we have done since the override in 2012, in addition to the $562,000 in Chapter 90 funds that we receive from our state for our roads. Our fixed costs covering employee benefits and insurance continue to be major budget drivers, comprising about 15% of the total budget. However, I want to bring your attention to a recent change in the past year. The town voted to move to a different health insurance provider that has afforded our team with more certainty in their projected costs. In recent years, we've seen double-digit increases in the healthcare line, but this year, with our new provider who has already confirmed an increase of 4.6%, so that's a great improvement. We continue to offset costs by using the meals tax revenue to promote economic development and to offset the debt burden to taxpayers by allocating $100,000 from the meals tax to pay down the debt from the middle school and public safety projects. And I just wanted to draw your attention to a few areas in the budget. In line 510, you will see an increase due to additional monies for our health department. This will allow us to hire an additional full-time staff person to help address the ongoing tasks of managing hoarding, septic plans and issues, and other public health-related topics that the department handles. It also reflects the moving of our social services employee fully under this department, instead of the salary being shared between the Council on Aging and the Board of Health. In line 541, the Council on Aging, with your approval, will gain an additional 10 hours for social services to outreach to our seniors. And then new this year, we have line 241, which is actually a consolidation of services under the Director of Planning and Community Development. In April of 2017, town meeting approved this position, creating a combined division. With this budgetary change, we are affording the Director of Planning Development flexibility to manage his budget areas that he is responsible for, that include the Conservation Department, Planning, Economic Development, and the Coastal Resource Officer. The board is also requesting an additional .8 DPW staff member to help take care of our public ground areas. The school department has identified some challenges, but has approved the budget line of $37 million to support their operations. In summary, before you is a balanced budget, and the board voted unanimously in favor of this motion.
From the Advisory Committee, Chairman Hyman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to everyone, all of you, for coming out and continuing the important business of the town. As I mentioned briefly last night, the Advisory Committee, over the course of the last several months on a weekly basis, reviewed each budget line item in this entire budget, met with each department head on a one-on-one basis, reviewing their past accomplishments in the past year, expected goals going forward in the new fiscal year, and their budget requests and the town administrator's recommended budget for each department. Chair Curran covered the highlights. I would reiterate what she said, which is that this is a level services budget. It is a balanced budget, but it is a level services budget also in that there are not large new initiatives being undertaken, but rather it's the continuation of the existing services that are provided to the residents. The one point, the Advisory Committee did unanimously on a 7-0 vote approve of the budget in the same way that the selectmen did, with the exception of line 691, historical buildings. These are, this is a modest line item, as you can see on page 29, that is for the upkeep of many of our historical properties in town. These are properties that are maintained by the Historical Society, and are, you know, I think the Advisory Committee felt on a 6-1 vote that the Historical Society's slightly higher budget request of $18,000 as opposed to the town administrator's recommended budget of $15,894, that difference of $2,000 and change was well worth it in order to support one of the very important drivers of the beauty of our town, the economic vitality of our town. I think we recognized as an advisory committee that that these buildings are important to our community, and that this $2,000 and change dollars is part of the Historical Society's request, was a reasonable request to maintain the upkeep of these buildings. So with that, again, the rest of the budget we recommend adoption on a 7-0 unanimous vote. Thank you.
We have a report from the school department being given by Superintendent Griffin. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ron Griffin, the Superintendent of Schools. First of all, thank you for coming out for a second evening. I told Mr. Moderator that I'd keep my comments to about 90 minutes or so, which should be about right. I promise I'll keep them brief. I do want to just preface the remarks by saying I really love talking about our schools, and so what you're going to get tonight is a very brief overview of some highlights of what's been going on in the Scituate Public Schools. But if after my remarks today, or if at any point in our school year, you want to know more about what happens in our district, in our schools, about our programming, budget, you name it, reach out, call, email, stop by and say hello. I'd be happy to answer any and all questions in greater detail. And so with that said, on behalf of our school committee and our entire faculty and staff, I submit to you this report on the Scituate Public Schools. It's an exciting time in the Scituate Public Schools. We've been working hard on a couple of key initiatives that have helped really grow our school district, from project-based, hands-on learning experiences to integrating technology to focusing on the wellness of all of our students. It's an exciting time to be part of this community and part of this school district. Over my shoulder is a picture of just a few of our students. We have 2,987 children that we work with every day in our schools. And every single day, we're committed to make sure that each one of those students grows as a human being and as a student. To do that work, there's 509 dedicated professionals. 281 of them are our classroom teachers. And what I share with you today really is a reflection of their work. It's a reflection of their dedication to making sure that every one of our students gets a world-class education every day. A key focal point of our work this year and the past few years has been expanding and growing our project-based learning experiences for students. Project-based learning, or PBL, is a focus on giving students learning experiences that are about the application of what they know, not just about facts, figures, and memorization. Project-based learning, like you see over my shoulder here, helps students not only learn skills and content, but also build communication and collaboration skills they need long after they graduate the Scituate Public Schools. The group of students over my shoulder are working collaboratively on a project that blends history, literature, and sciences. Because PBL, project-based learning, helps students learn holistically, it moves us away from the idea that education should only be in one kind of learning. That is, learning math, or learning science, or learning history by itself. Because that's not the real world. When you go to work, your boss doesn't ask you to just read, or just do math. They ask you to use it as a tool. And that's been a big focus of our staff's work this year, and will be a big focus of our work in years to come. I want to share with you just a few quick examples. In our high school, we have our students learning about physics concepts through building trebuchets and launch angles. In our middle school, we have students who are working with state and local agencies to map the biodiversity of the vernal pool just outside of Gates. We had our 8th graders this year learning about hurricanes, so they forecasted hurricanes and nor'easters. As a sidebar, I should take their advice when I'm thinking about snow days in the future. In our elementary schools, when they're learning about electricity, they're building wind turbines and conducting electricity, in this case, with bananas. Another point of emphasis in our educational program this year has been the continued integration of the 21st century technology skills. And that really happens in two different ways. One is just the explicit education, the explicit learning of new skills. For example, over my shoulder, teaching students at a young age about coding and programming. It's a language in the 21st century, and we're starting that education at a really early age. As they get older, in middle school, they learn about that language connected with the hardware. And when they get to high school, they're taking that programming language, the hardware, and bringing it to life through things like robotics. The other part of our work building 21st century technology skills with our students is helping them use technology to better access existing learning. In our program of studies, our students use things like Google Classroom, Skype, Google Drive, and lots of other platforms to help them better access their learning. Over my shoulder is a group of elementary school students who are Skyping with kids in Malawi. It's connected to not only their history and literature, but also to community service. Beyond expanding in some of the leading edges of education, project-based learning, 21st century literacy skills, we've also been focusing a lot on strengthening the core of our educational program. One of our focuses this year has been elementary school literacy. It's been focusing on making sure that our students are mastering reading for comprehension at an early age. Because if you can't first read, then you can't use reading as a learning tool. We've been using this thing called Understanding by Design. It's a mapping approach to building curriculum. And it allows our teachers to break down complex skills like reading in smaller, manageable chunks that students can master at an early age. So that students are leaving second and third grade, mastering those reading skills, and going on into middle school and high school, being able to use reading as that tool to access history and science and literature. In addition, as we think about our core, we've also been focusing on co-teaching. Co-teaching is really just an instructional model in which a special education teacher and a classroom or content teacher work together to help students master skills and overcome challenges. And this year, Scituate High School has been named a Level 1 school in closing the achievement gap by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, in large part to their work through co-teaching. And finally, as we think about the pedagogy, the core of what we do, making sure that our instructional strategies focus on small group, hands-on learning experiences in all that we do has permeated education in the Scituate Public Schools this year. From elementary to high school, giving kids opportunities to work together, work in small groups with each other, as well as with instructors, helps close the achievement gap, and also helps give students an opportunity to grow beyond what is the standard, to give students challenge when they're interested in more and interested in deeper learning. SEL, or social emotional learning, has been a big focus of our educational program this year and plans to be beyond. I'll share with you two brief examples. Part of social emotional learning is helping students understand the skills that are required to navigate an increasingly complex social world. From social media to the connection that they have with each other and students beyond, giving students the skills to navigate those relationships is fundamental to make sure they're successful long after they graduate. In addition to that, making sure that you catch them doing the right thing and celebrating when students do well and do those positive behaviors has been an important part of our educational program. Over my shoulder is the Golden Tray program, where in elementary school, students who are showing themselves as leaders, as mentors to others, get to have a special lunch with their peers, with a special educator, or even with their principal. Growth mindset is a philosophy that we've integrated into all that we do. Growth mindset, if you're not familiar, is just the belief that if you can't do something yet, you'll be able to do it eventually with hard work and perseverance. And so we integrate that into our learning experiences by giving students opportunities to set goals, to challenge themselves, to self-reflect, and to go back and try again if at first they haven't succeeded. I'm proud to say that we've had over 1,000 students participate in Scituate athletics this year, over 25 different athletic programs. And we're setting some new banners in our gymnasium, and on those new banners, we've got a couple of additional Patriot League championships to celebrate this year. Over my shoulder, 2 Patriot League champions both in boys and girls basketball, Patriot League champions in field hockey and girls soccer, and champions in football. In addition, our team was fortunate enough to work with the Boston Red Sox to host our annual Thanksgiving football game at Fenway Park. And while Hingham just squeaked out a win, which was questionable right at the end, our families were able to have a wonderful experience. Our kids really enjoyed that experience as well, and we're hopeful to continue that partnership. In our fine arts programs, we've actually expanded our fine arts curriculum this year, giving our elementary school students an additional 12-week program in fine arts that lets them connect to art through nature. Again, that theme of cross-curricular educational experiences. Before I share any more about band, orchestra, and drama, I have to take a moment to thank all of you for this space here. Our band, our drama, our music programs have been fortunate to be able to use this space this year to hold our holiday festivals, our band concerts, as well as some of our drama productions, one of which was written and directed by our students. And if you didn't get a chance to see, our middle school students held an incredible rendition of James and the Giant Peach just over my shoulder here on the stage. Oh, and finally, one last interesting addition to our program this year is the new ukulele program. And if you've never tried to play ukulele, it's like this big, and with adult hands, it's a real challenge. But for students, they love it. Finally, I thought it apropos to share with you briefly just some images from the Gates Middle School here at town meeting. This space in our Gates Middle School has really been a product of the work of this community and some tremendous collaboration between the town team and our school department. If it weren't for this commitment to excellence that this community has, we wouldn't have this space, we wouldn't have this incredible middle school. So I want to take just a moment, if you haven't seen the building, to share a few images with you. Over the past year, our school district has had other school leaders, district leaders, state leaders, and officials reach out and want to know more about what project-based learning looks like in our middle school and how we leverage this incredible 21st century, state-of-the-art facility to give kids the best education possible. We would not have been able to do that without this group of taxpayers and citizens' support. So on behalf of our entire school community, and on behalf of our school committee, the school building committee, I thank you sincerely for your support. Finally, as we look forward, it's an exciting time to be in our school district, and we've had some incredible opportunities currently, but I think we have incredible opportunities ahead of us as well. While I've had the pleasure of sharing with you some highlights from the year, some highlights about our program, there's always room to grow and improve. And if we want our next generation of Scituate Public Schools graduates to be successful contributors to our society, we have to grow, evolve, and challenge them. To that end, the Scituate Public Schools has already begun the process of setting a vision and charting the future. The initial work occurred this winter. We sat down with PTOs from every school and faculty in every building and had conversations about what we want to see in our students 10 years from now and what education should look like a decade from now. We're using that information to drive a conversation about what our strategic plan will look like going forward and what the vision for the Scituate Public Schools can be. From the classrooms to the stage to the laboratories to the football field, we want to chart a future for our schools that not only continues to focus on the excellence that we have, but expands upon it. We're incredibly fortunate to have a community like you who's supportive of our schools and our school district, committed and focused to help every one of our 2,987 students get a world-class education. As a school district, we'll continue to honor that commitment by striving to giving every one of those students that world-class education every single day. On behalf of our school committee and our entire team, I thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Superintendent. So what we'll do now is what we usually do. If you turn to page 25 of your advisory committee booklet, you will see a list of line items. And what I will do is I will call off the major heading for each line item. And if you want to hold anything in that particular department, just say hold. So for example, on page 25, you'll see Board of Selectmen Town Administrator, 123. If you want to discuss any of the subline items, just say hold. Then I'll move to Advisory Committee and so on. At the end of this process, we'll go back and vote all the unheld items, and that puts them to bed. But then we'll return to each of the held items, and the person that called for the hold should come forward, be ready to speak at the microphone, tell us why it was held, ask the appropriate questions, and then we can have a debate and vote. So there we go, and let's begin. Page 25. 123. 131. 135. 141. 145. 155. 158. 159. 161. 171 through 176. 182. 241. 192. 210. 240. I'm sorry. Oh, there was a punch hole right there. I thought it was a 4. Thank you. All right, 220. Oh, okay. 220 is held. 230. There's no 240, so 295. 300. 300 is a hold. 310. 400. 410. 410 is held. 423. 424. 424 is held. 510. 541. 541 is held. 543. 549. 561. I've got another punch hole here, Kathy. What's library?
610.
610. 630. 630 is held. 650. 691. 691 is held. 720. 720 is held. 910. 911. 912. 913. 914. 916. That concludes all the items listed. I'll go back and identify the holds, and then I'll accept a motion to approve or disapprove all the unheld items. 220. 300. 410. 424. 541. 630. 691. And 720. Those are the held items. I'll accept a motion to act on the unheld items. It's been moved to approve, seconded. There being no further discussion since these were not held. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. So voted and declared unanimous. We return now to the held items, and the first one on the list is item 220, fire. Gentleman to my right. Jim, could you move a little closer to the mic, please? Thank you.
There's a little switch on the bottom.
James Hunt, Manlot Road.
Sir.
I have some comments and questions on the fire budget for my friend Chief Murphy. We all appreciate a level-funded budget. In this case, in reviewing the departmental submission, Chief Murphy requested $200,000 for overtime training, which was probably dedicated to the second ambulance. Am I correct in that?
You are
Chief
correct.
Yes. Now, we built and commissioned a brand new public safety center for about $18 million a couple of years ago. It has three double bays, lots of room, and at night we have one engine and 2 firefighters in that building. We were promised a second ambulance in that building upon commissioning that facility. And in Chief Murphy's budget discussion, he comments on this issue as a goal, a priority goal for the coming year, including, I quote, "We have a potential solution to offset much of this additional funding," the funding that was deleted. My question is, what is that potential solution and when might it be realized?
Chief, to answer the question.
So, Jim, this is a high priority goal for us, and this, right now, we do have an ambulance up there during the day. Right now, it's a challenge for us just to fill the staff, and we have actually 4 vacancies right now. Fortunately, we've been able to hire 2 and potentially 1 more, but it's going to take about 9 months to get them to the floor. So with 4 vacancies and we have 3 people out long-term hurt, we're having a challenge filling the voids we are now. So what we're doing is a goal is to try between January 1st next year, hopefully January 1st, at the latest July 1st next year, to have that ambulance staff 24/7 at that building. But it's a personnel challenge right now that's hindering that to move forward. There are some cost savings estimates we can look at, possibly changing our ambulance billing to get more revenues back is one part of the solution, the big part of the solution to offset some of those costs.
So just, I want to thoroughly understand. The solution for the funding shortage is a rearrangement of ambulance billing plus a few other cost-saving measures?
They will help offset that cost. If the $200,000 you see there, if I had to pay it all in overtime costs, that's what it would cost me right now. But I don't even know if I could fill those voids. We're asking people right now, we have a 20% manpower issue right now due to vacancies and also some long-term injuries. So it is a goal, hopefully between January 1st. We have 3 people hired. It's going to take about 9 months to get them to the floor. Right now, there's a shortage of paramedics, and that's the challenge out there. We're hiring only paramedics to provide the best service to this town, and they get a lot more better care. So that's what we're doing. We're hiring paramedics. We'd rather be a little bit patient to hire paramedics than have EMTs and train them and take 2 years, cost, time to keep them here. So it's going to take a little time, but we will get that second ambulance 24/7. Hopefully next year. Will be next year, between January 1st and July 1st.
Well, I consider that a satisfactory answer. My only comment, Mr. Moderator, is that I encourage everyone at this meeting, every one of the members of the legislature, to encourage and plead with the executive to get this done. An $18 million building with a 1 fire engine at night makes no sense whatsoever, and that makes response time improvement a fallacy. It's just not there. Thank you very much.
There being no one else at the mics, before I call for a vote, I'll do my best stewardess impression. The exits for fire purposes are in the back and to the sides. How's that, Chief? Okay. And don't all rush at once, please. All right. No one else at the mics. Is there a motion to approve this held item? It's been moved, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. The next hold was on line item 300, School Committee. Gentleman to my right.
James Hunt, Manmount Road. In discussion with at least one member of the school committee over the recent weeks, it's been clear that the unfunded draft budget shortfall was about $700,000. Now, we just appropriated over almost $1 million from free cash for a project that has little, if any, definition, and yet we're shorting the schools $700,000. Mr. Superintendent, do you consider that a critical need?
Superintendent to answer the question.
Of course, the schools have a critical need. I will say that our team has done a tremendous job identifying where those needs are, prioritizing the kinds of resources that we require for FY19, and what you see in front of you is a balanced budget that utilizes all the resources at our fingertips, not just the town's resources, but also leveraging state and federal resources as well.
What steps were taken to present that additional need to the advisory committee?
So to close the budget gap, is that your question?
Yeah, to close the desired gap.
Yeah, so 3 basic steps that we did. First, we identified all of our contractual services, had our team go through every contract that we have, outsourced services, busing, you name it, renegotiated every contract that we could. That saved about $100,000 when it's all said and done. We also re-identified all of our savings through supplies and materials. We do a lot of our work, as you can see, virtually, and so as we continue to do more virtual work, we're able to find savings there as well. The other savings are based on enrollment. We've got an 8% decrease in enrollment over the past 10 years in our schools, and so in those cases where enrollment has been down, staffing attached to that enrollment can go down as well. And we're still in the process of negotiating with our 6 associations and unions for the next 3-year contracts there. And so while we still have work to do in that contract work, we're confident that between our work with them and our work with our team, we'll be able to close that gap.
Thank you for that explanation. My comment is similar. An $80 million school and essentially short funding the school department $700,000 while spending almost $1 million on an unspecified project just doesn't make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak?
I can, if you want.
It's up to you. Chairman Curran.
Yes, just on behalf of the board, just to clarify our financial fiscal policies that have been in effect. Free cash has not been used for years for operating purposes, and we certainly are always supportive of the schools, and if they have a gap, we certainly will help to address that in the future.
All right, there being no one else at the mics, is there a motion on line item 300? It's been moved to approve. It's been seconded. There be no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. The next item is item 410, facilities. Gentleman to my right.
Jamestown Manlaw Road, I promise this is the last one for me. In terms of facilities, on the second page of the facilities manager's budget submission, he notes that one of the risks and challenges that he identifies is to manage expectations in 6 schools while dealing with limited funding resources and, quote, increase social media attention. As one who is somewhat vaguely familiar with social media attention, I question, in the major budget components in this department, personnel services are 36%, utility consumption is 34%, supplies are 1%, technical services is 1%, fuel is 26%. The major function of this department is repair and maintenance. The total budget dedication to repair and maintenance is 2%. I'd like an explanation of why repair and maintenance is only 2% of this department's operating budget. while they're looking, I will add the comment that we've seen on this mysterious social media some pictures lately of windows literally falling out of the school buildings. We've seen asbestos tile crumbling and scaling in the school floors. We hear terrible stories about roof leaks on roofs that supposedly had been recently repaired, and yet only 2% of this department's budget is dedicated to school repair. I remind everyone that the school facilities are the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen, not the school committee, by charter.
Mr. Moderator, may I?
Go ahead.
While we
Madam
wait for
Chairman.
Kevin to look to justify a little bit that he's looking up. So the facilities budget that you called out, Mr. Hunt,
Yeah.
is the town side. It doesn't include the maintenance numbers for the school side. You'll see under the detail that there are no school custodians that roll up under this particular budget line. So if you're looking for operating maintenance issues to be addressed, it would probably be in the detail of the school budget. So I may ask Superintendent Griffin to come forward. But your point is taken for all the pictures being on social media. There certainly are significant capital improvements that need to be made at the schools. And I think you recall last night, town meeting voted $30,000 for a study to address all that moving forward.
In response, Mr. Moderator,
80.
Gentleman to my right.
in response, janitorial services and minor maintenance are the responsibility of the schools. That is defined in the charter. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is talking about repairing broken windows as capital expenses. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is daily, weekly, monthly, ongoing maintenance of an expedient nature, and there's additionally preventive maintenance. It was in the budget hearing that I attended that there are some 500 filter units in the new middle school, and nobody has the time, the wherewithal, or the experience to maintain those filters. That's just one example. 2% of the facility's operating budget is not adequate. It's just not.
The Finance Director, Ms. Holt.
If you look at the department submission, you'll notice that the numbers, which none of you can see, but for the speaker, you'll notice the numbers don't foot. If you look at the submission that's in the book, where they're grouped by personal services, Schedule 510, we were just doing quick math in Excel. It's 32% of their overall budget. The purchase of services, which would include utilities, any contracts that they have with maintenance personnel to come in, I'm trying to think of like electrical contractors, those types of services would be in 520, that's 35%. The materials and supplies, so lumber, building supplies, cleaning supplies, that's 20%. And then their capital outlay is the larger projects that don't meet capital project, which would be $25,000 with a useful life of over 5 years. That's 12% of his budget. And those are for the town side buildings, as was already stated. On the school side, those are a part of their overall budget. But as Kevin Kelly, our Director of Facilities, is the town Director of Facilities, he does speak to his goals for both the town and the school in his budget narrative.
So, Ms. Holt, I really thank you, because you are, if anyone, detail-oriented. Those of us less experienced rely on the macro figures that are supplied. So the 2% is not accurate? Is that what you're saying?
It's not accurate. If you add those numbers down, they don't foot.
What is the percentage of the facilities department budget dedicated to repair and maintenance?
Well, I would argue it would be purchase of services, materials and supplies, and capital outlay, which would be 68%, not counting the human factor, which would be the maintenance staff and the custodians, which would be the other 32.
Now I'm really confused.
But you can come and visit me and we can be confused together. I have a candy bowl I'm willing to share.
That's probably a very good idea. My point is, our schools are falling apart. There's no reason for it. If you want to let them fall apart until we have to build anew, say so. and we'll proceed on that basis. It's that simple. Thank you very much.
There being no one else at the microphones, do I hear a motion? It's been moved to approve, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Next item held was number 424. Sir.
Good evening. Bernie Westerveld, Harborview Road. I see a doubling of the budget for the streetlights and beacons. Can somebody explain? Because I believe the lights are in place. They're LED, so they shouldn't wear out for the next 10 years.
To answer the question, Ms. Holt.
I need to stop walking with my readers on. Everything seems closer. At the special town meeting, for those of you who were here, for the special town meeting in November, we added $60,000 to this budget. So the original budget was 60, and then in November we added another 60 to 120 because we did purchase our streetlights, and so we no longer pay rental. So we got that credit back from National Grid. But we have since converted all of the lights to LED, and we have not seen the credit. So we are paying higher than usual streetlight bills currently. We don't know when the credit's going to come in, so I didn't want to get caught short-footed. That's not a phrase, but I'm going to use that phrase today. I didn't want to be short-sighted and be caught flat-footed without having enough money for the budget. So I did leave it at 120 and request from the advisory committee and the other reviewing committees, such as the Board of Selectmen, to do that. If for some reason we get the LED credit, we can make an adjustment at special town meeting to reduce that budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I hear a motion? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted by unanimous vote. Next item is 541. Gentleman to my left.
Gordon Price, 48 Manlot Road. My reason for asking a hold on this is for more informational than an issue with the budget. It's not often that we have a group this large and that we have a chance to promote some of the services that are provided in town. I don't think most people either know or understand the breadth and the width of the services that are provided to the seniors in this community for 0.29% by Linda Hayes and her staff. They do a phenomenal job. They deserve every accolade that we can give them. And my suspicion is that we're going to hear a lot more about COA and seniors in the next 12 months. So I just want to bring that information to the town meeting tonight, Mr. Chairman, and ask that we approve this item.
Is there a motion? I'll take Dr. Price's comment as a motion. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, so voted and declared unanimous. Next item was 630.
Gordon Price, 48 Manlot Road. I will make a motion on this one, though, and it will be to accept the proposal. But again, it's informational.
Is there a second? It's been seconded. Dr. Price.
Recently become more acquainted with the Recreation Department and some of their activities. We have quite a few pickleball players here tonight, and the group is getting to be quite good at it. Maura Glancy is doing a great job with the organization. A lot of help from Chris Roberts and a few other people. So again, I think that most of us don't understand how much service we're getting for that $150,000. They're really providing a great service to the community. And again, I'm sure with the collaboration with the Council on Aging and our new center, hopefully a year and a half down the road, that'll improve even more. So urge acceptance of the budget amount.
All right, been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, so voted and declared unanimous. Next hold was 691.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As I discussed briefly earlier, the advisory committee on a 6-to-1 or I should probably make the motion first, correct? Sorry. I'm sorry. I'll make the motion first, which is that I move that the historical buildings account line 691 be increased by $2,106 to a total of $18,000.
18,000. Okay. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Heineman.
So as I mentioned earlier, the advisory committee on a 6-to-1 vote thought that this nominal increase to the level that was requested by the Historical Society for the maintenance of historical buildings was, again, nominal and well worth the amount of money spent to maintain this asset for our community. I know we were told, and I know the next gentleman here to speak will probably give some more detail on what they might do with that, but I know we were told that this would support a painting project at the Cudworth School, Cudworth House, I believe. So
part of it.
Gentleman to my right.
Bob Chessian, 9 Stearns Road. I'm also Vice President of the Scituate Historical Society. Dave Ball, unfortunately, couldn't be here, so you got me. But the Society is responsible for the maintenance of 13 properties in Scituate, 7 which are owned by the town that we maintain. The Lighthouse, the Bates House, the Mann House, Lawson Tower, the Lawson Farm Gates, the Cudworth House, and the Mass Humane Boats House. It's difficult to maintain one property in Scituate alone, as you can see by the past winter that we've had. What we see is the Humane Society needs to be re-roofed. At Lawson Tower, we have an annual inspection of our bell system. 3 windows have to be replaced. We have pest control. I had a group of French exchange students. The minute we went in, the alarm went off and we had to disconnect it. Landscaping. The Cudworth House needs painting inside and out. The Lawson gates, you've noticed, were hit by a delivery truck. And when we had them repaired, they're not set up yet, they found major damage in some of the other parts. And besides basic maintenance, our budget includes electricity, natural gas, telephone for the alarms, and oversight. We feel that our request for $18,000 is very conservative. We spend considerable time as volunteers maintaining the properties for the town, as well as our own properties. And to be quite honest, I think we might be one of the best deals the town gets. I'd like to close with a little statement. During the Great Depression, the town built a new lantern room on Scituate Light, stating that a community is judged by the condition of its public buildings. I hope this body will grant us our $18,000 to preserve our historical properties. Thank you.
Gentleman to my left.
Ron Swan, 35 Grove Street. I am the chairman of the Cudworth House. And whenever possible, we actually do work ourselves and do repairs. But it comes to a time where the buildings are aged. They're older than the Gates School, the old Gates School. And most of the structures are made of wood. Some of them are made of stone and brick, but most of them are made of wood. And due to the conditions of weather and what we have, we do very well. And it's important that we keep them up. We have Cudworths that come to the Cudworth House very often from all over the country to see the house. And it's a nice museum. I tell everybody it's a wonderful place to visit, and if you haven't been there, come when it's open this summer.
When is it open next?
Well, it's open for the students in June. I don't know the schedule yet on the summer schedule, but it'll be open for probably 4 times, maybe 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. I just wanted to review some numbers why the board fell where they did on this. So typically it's been a shared responsibility between the historical society as well as the town side. And please know that we appreciate all the hard work that everybody does to maintain these buildings. We value them just as much. They also have reserves. They have trust funds. They have, I think, quite a bit amount of money. I've heard anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000 in their own trust to also put towards this, which our other departments do not have that flexibility. Over the past couple of years, just as a matter of trends over last year, this year for the fiscal year 19 budget, we gave them a 15% increase over what they were budgeted in previous years. So that's a pretty significant increase when you think about it. I know $2,000 isn't a lot of money, but just to give you some perspective when you're looking at a budget in totality. And in previous years, when they had gotten 5% increases or 10% increases, they never spent all the money that we allocated. So we felt that it was a fair assessment to give them a 15% increase, and that is a justification why it was $2,000 less than what they had requested.
All right. There being no one else at the mics.
Point of order, Mr. Matter.
State your point of order, please.
In order to balance the budget, don't we have to find $2,000 somewhere else, either now or later?
Well, two things. First, you have to identify yourself.
I'm sorry, Ed Mosier, 307 Tilden Road.
Thanks, Ed. Well, the answer to that is no. There's a 1991 Superior Court case called Hanson School Committee versus Hanson Moderator. And in that case, the Hanson Moderator ruled a motion such as the one that was offered out of order unless the person who made it could identify where the money would be cut from the budget. And the Superior Court said, you know, moderators have got a lot to keep an eye on, but moderators can't make decisions on how the money should be spent. So the court said that for me to require the type of suggestion, and a sound suggestion, to me, to have me do that, it would be illegal. So I can't do it. But if this motion is passed, what will have to happen at the end is the Board of Selectmen, probably with the town administrator and Ms. Holt, will have to craft a auxiliary kind of motion that identifies where the extra money would come from. You know, free cash, raise and appropriate, transfer from some identified fund. So at the end, and I guess I'm asking them to think about getting this ready, they'll have to find the $2,000 if you approve it. I hope that helps. All right, gentleman to my right. For the second time.
For the second time, Bob Chessie at 9 Stearns Road, Scituate Historical. If you look at Article 13, you'll notice that we are giving back to town $2,205. We're involved with other historical societies around the state, and we actually found the cheaper price for the Lafayette carriage. And that money we are returning to the town. So if you're worried about where it's coming from, you can just give it back to us. We'll take it.
Lady to my right.
Ann Burbine, Pennycrest Road. Keep in mind, the money that Mr. Chessie is talking about is from CPC, Community Preservation. The Historical Society receives a tremendous amount of money from CPC. A certain portion of all the monies that come in to CPC from the state and from our tax dollars go to the Historical Society. I think under the circumstances, while I certainly can value what the advisory board has suggested, there is sufficient funds, as Ms. Curran has pointed out, as well as CPC and historical preservation, that this $2,000 is just not worth it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, there's no third dip in the pool. All right, are we ready for the vote? Well, nobody said no. So the motion on the floor is to raise the request to the amount of $18,000, which, if I understand, is an increase of $2,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. So voted and declared a majority vote. If you doubt my hearing, 7 of you may rise and ask for a counted vote. Okay, and so Board of Selectmen, get your motion ready. Next item held was 7:20. Sir.
Jack Zakauskas, Colonel Mansfield Drive. I'm guessing that we just assume that we can't do anything about debt and interest, that we have the debt and we have to pay it. But it's approximately 10% of our budget, and it's gone up considerably since 2015. Question I have, so we understand where the money is going, is can we know what the balance is at the beginning of fiscal year 2019 and what the balance of debt will be at the end of fiscal year 2019? And along with that question, for the $7.5 million that's being asked for 2019, can we have a breakdown of how much is principal and how much is interest? The reason why I asked that last question is that it appears that we did about $7.5 million for fiscal year 2018, and yet it looks like we're only reducing what's being asked by approximately $100,000. So I think we need to consider all this with the amount of debt we're carrying before we consider taking on more debt in the future. Thank you.
To answer the question, Ms. Holt.
This is dangerous. I took off the glasses and now we're looking at really small numbers. But now I can walk without tripping. Okay. So I'm going to take your second question first, if I may, sir. In the $7.4 million in the budget, the principal is $4,392,080. The interest on long-term debt is $2,928,282. There's $5,000 for debt service, other debt service services, which are arbitrage services. And then we have interest on short-term notes, which is the short-term borrowing we do. We currently have a $14 million ban outstanding, which is $167,387. As to your first question, as of the beginning of this year, we had $109,907,032 in outstanding long-term debt. That's for all sources. We'll be retiring on the general fund approximately that $4.3 million. I don't have, but I could get for you, the sewer, water, transfer station, and water enterprise reductions that would go along with that. You caught me flat-footed, to use my phrase from earlier. But I would be delighted to get that for you after the meeting or anytime you want to call me. I think I hit both your questions, but the only other thing I do want to comment on is that a large portion of this is the debt exclusions. So we currently have 6 debt exclusions on the books. We have Wampatuck School, the Jenkins School, which had a little piece of a high school renovation in it, a sewer treatment plant override, that debt exclusion override that was done about 15 years ago. And then we have the 3 new ones, which are the middle school, the library, and the public safety complex. So that's a large portion of this debt.
May I make another statement?
Sir.
I appreciate you mentioning the fact of the debt exclusion items, but to make sure we understand is that we're still carrying over $100 million worth of debt, including all those exclusions. Debt exclusions are the result of us voting for 2.5 overrides, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Selectman Vignani.
Just one more quick comment on that. As Nancy and the gentleman mentioned, that the majority of that debt is Proposition 2.5 overrides. And our goal in our budget process is to keep that amount that hits the general fund level. And every year that's between about $1.2 million and $1.5 million of additional debt. And that's how we roll back into the capital plan in terms of what we're going to go and actually hit the general budget. And that will continue to go up if there's another override for something else.
I was wondering if we could give Ms. Holt a round of applause. I think she deserves it. All right. Anyone else at the mics? No. All those in favor of the number printed for debt and interest? Well, that's probably not the way to put it, huh? To approve, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Now that completes all the held items. However, our budget is now $2,000, I won't say over budget, I'll say misaligned with the initial motion. So I think we need a reconciliation. Mr. Town Administrator.
Mr. Moderator, the budget is actually in balance. The motion reflected the amounts in the advisory board column, so it included that $18,000.
Wow. You know, if you could give me some baseball scores or something for tomorrow.
It is currently the top of the third. The Red Sox are up 4-0.
All right. Good job. Okay. So, way back in the beginning, you'll remember that Ms. Curran made a motion that identified where all the funding sources were, what the numbers were, and that's the motion I am now going to ask you to vote on, just so we can close the book on this article. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Now, I have three things. Number one, I have been admonished to admonish you that there should be no food or beverages other than water in the auditorium. And please take your trash and empty water bottles with you. I guess that means if you had drinking something else, you can leave it behind. But, well, I guess the message here is try to pick up after yourself and don't be like your kids. So let's see, the next thing is there are trash containers over by the exits. And finally, I'd like to thank once again Emily, but also Bill Richter, who came in to cover the sound for tonight. And a round of applause for Bill and Emily. Now, before we go to these next articles, and I really think that they're going to move quickly, I want to bring things from the sublime to the sublimer. Representative Jim Cantwell has joined us in his official capacity, I believe for the last time, and I'd like to ask Jim to come up and say a few words to town meeting. Jim, come up here, please.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Mr. Moderator, Rich Bowen, thank you so very much, and thank you for the very kind reception. This is a bittersweet moment for me to come simply to say thank you. Being your state representative has been the greatest professional honor of my life, and I want to thank you for allowing me to do this. It's an honor because I've been able to work with a number of you to make a difference on items that went from A to Z. Helping children with autism, Gigi Meraki, who's here, would know the great work that she has done, to Z with zoning reform, our planning board, and others. So many things that we've been able to do together. I also want to thank you for taking all of your time, your busy time, to make a difference for this town, for our town of Scituate. For now, I know over 375 years keeping the tradition alive for local self-governance. By the way, it is not true that Sean Harris was a selectman 375 years ago, but I just want to know. But the fact about being here for self-governance, it reinforces that we hit the cosmic lottery to be born, to live here in Scituate at this time in the world's history, in this country, in this area. We are so very lucky, and I do want you to all know when I go to this area, now I'm leaving to work for Senator Markey, we'll be able to do so many of the same issues, which I'm thrilled to do now in a different capacity, to work as we have with the selectmen, with FEMA, with the Army Corps, so many great projects. But I want you to know, there are times that people can be very cynical, saying that government doesn't work for us and doesn't do what we need it to be done. And I would say, look at Scituate to refute that. Over the last 10 years, you all together made such a huge difference. I'll take 1 minute just to go through just where we are here now. New auditorium, new Gates School because of the great work of our school committee working with the selectmen. The new library, Karen Canfield and so many others bringing the library. The Maritime Center, Jamie Gilmore working with so many to have the Maritime Center come to be. We have the recognized cultural district through Paul Cuxtis and others. New public safety building, Chief Murphy, Chief Stewart. By the way, at the state level, we have the dam and seawall legislation, which never would have happened if it weren't for people like David Ball, Nancy Durfee, and others. Nancy Holt, by the way, who gave us information early on. That's made a huge difference, over $100 million to help communities up and down the coast. We have a seafood commission that was Frank Merarchi's idea, trying to help fishermen throughout this state, and we've been preventing substance misuse, led by Scituate Facts and Anne Marie Galvin. Final thing, at the federal level, our town, Scituate and Marshfield, proved when people say you can't make a difference at the federal level, these selectmen here, all of us working together on flood insurance, we pushed back, as you remember, just a few years ago with regulations from the federal government would have devastated our community. And because of the hard work we've all done together, both with that and MAPS, and it was the selectmen leading it, but Carol Conway, who's here, Liz Charlton was in the back, the tremendous work, Neil Duggan on FEMA MAPS. So I just wanted to end by saying you in Scituate, you town meeting members make such a tremendous difference at the local, state, federal level. It's been a huge honor for me to come and work with you each and every day. I want you to know that, by the way, all of your concerns are still going to be addressed in an expert fashion. Because Pat O'Connor, who's my colleague at the State House, our state senator, is still covering all matters. Joan Moschino is a state representative here for Scituate as well, does a phenomenal job. And just so you know, I don't know where Gigi Merarchi is. Gigi, where are you? Gigi, if you'd stand up for a moment. Where's Gigi? The young lady in the pink back there hiding and who has worked at the State House prior for Frank Hines, his chief of staff, then for Garrett Bradley, and it's been an honor for me working with Gigi. Any needs that you have, Gigi will make sure that everything will be expertly addressed. But thank you so very much for the honor to be your representative. It's been great working with you all, and I look forward to working with you in a new capacity. Thank you so much.
Wow. And now we take up the Waterways Enterprise Fund after that. Such is the life of our legislators. And Jim reminds me, and this is something I omitted from my opening remarks, this is our 382nd annual town meeting. You are one of the oldest parliamentary bodies in the world. On the motion for Article 5, Selectman Harris.
I move the town transfer from available funds in the Waterways Enterprise receipts the sum of $1,004,393 for the purpose of funding the Waterways Enterprise Fund for the ensuing fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018 as follows. Personnel services, $390,614, and other expenses, $613,779.
It's been moved, seconded, discussion, Selectman Harris.
As you can see in the advisory committee booklet, there aren't any really major changes in this enterprise fund. Some of the things that were voted at our last annual town meeting, such as the de-ices, have been tested and fared well this past January. Secondly, the engineering and permitting is continuing along for our piling replacement at our town-owned marina. Just as a little side note, some of you might have seen some of the damage that was done from the Riley storm around our town pier, and those repairs will be done through insurance proceeds.
From the advisory committee, Mr. Kelly.
Hi. The Waterways Enterprise Fund is remarkable. It's one of the primary reasons why many of us live here.
not as boaters, but just for the natural beauty. The harbor, the waterways, and this is a self-funding enterprise fund. Inflows come from mooring fees, commercial dockage, slip rental, the boatyard lease, even ice sails. And the funds are used to better our waterways. The accomplishments of this year with the de-icers, it's going to extend the life of our docks. The South River dredging, when it finally comes, hopefully will even aid in the foreshore protection. And obviously, last night's long-discussed boat unit number 3. So the advisory committee unanimously supports this warrant article.
Speaker to my left.
Janet Fairbanks, Neilgate Street. Last night we voted to approve the $430,000. I see it listed here. Shouldn't $430,000 be deleted?
To answer the question, Selectman Harris.
It's not listed here. That was in the capital plan.
I think it's just like an accomplishment.
It's the 4th bullet down.
Ma'am, do you want to bring it down and show the crew what you've got there?
Well, it's the 4th bullet down. You can read
Yeah,
it.
Janet, it's not part of the budget. It's just as a note. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we'll give it a minute so they can answer. So, Chairman Heineman.
Hi Janet. So it's just a discussion point of here's an item that is purchased out of these retained earnings.
So it was part of the explanation? Lincoln, that was part of the explanation? Oh, okay. All right. So, ma'am, I think that was just in the sales pitch rather than in the article itself. Probably putting it the wrong way, but there you go. Anyone else? All right. It's been moved and seconded, requires a majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Article 6. Selectman Vignani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town transfer from available funds in the Golf Course Enterprise Fund receipts in the sum of $978,499 for the purpose of funding the Widows Walks Golf Course for the ensuing fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018 as follows. Personal services, $201,592, and other expenses, $776,857.
It's been moved, seconded, discussion. Selectman Vignani.
Thank you. Jerry just mentioned a second ago, enterprise funds are funded by the users, not by the taxpayers, and we're going over 5 of them right now. One quick point on the golf course, it's not just a golf course. Many of the residents use this. We walk dogs on it. We sled. There's Easter egg hunts. There's ice skating. And the golf course also supports the high school golf team. Some of the things that have been going on with the golf course, 2 years ago in 2016, you all remember we had a big drought. So I think Bob Sanderson, who's sitting back here, runs a golf course. I think most of his effort went towards recovering from that drought activity. Which really put a tough year on the books. Prior to that, for the past several years, the golf course has always run it like a break even. But in 2017, the bond that we used to buy the golf course expired. And we talked about this a little bit last night. So there's about a $300,000 expense that has gone away. So the top 3 projects that we've been talking about for a while that we're going to use these funds for, and actually one of them got passed last night, is replacing a 24-year-old irrigation system. The other one is designing the clubhouse to try and improve the design for better use. The other one is trying to improve the curb appeal of the golf course to make it more attractive, fix the fencing and some plantings in the parking lot. The revenue for this fund is projected at $1.287 million. The expenses are budgeted at $1.043 million, and the excess of that will be used to fund the projects that I just mentioned. And the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously in support of this motion.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. DeLacy.
Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Selectman Yanni said, I think what's important to know is from enterprise funds that these are self-funding funds, right? If you go to the golf course and use the golf course, you are helping pay essentially to have that golf course still survive. The Golf Course Enterprise Fund had no significant operational changes in fiscal year 18. Since the fiscal 17 revenue, which was caused by the drought, as Selectman Yanni stated, was funded at last year's special town meeting. This has essentially helped retire any of that long-term remaining debt that we had for the course. So this is obviously a good thing. Now that this debt is paid off, we're going to be using that $300,000 in annual receipts to help target new services and to help improve projects for the facility. There's some minor storms from Hurricane Riley that we kind of spoke about last night that need to be improved now. There's improvements to the clubhouse that we're looking to potentially make. And in addition to that, I think it's been stated a couple times now with the irrigation system, which is 24 years old, the useful life is 20 years, and we're actually spending more money trying to maintain that, and we're at the point where we need to replace that. The Advisory Committee recommends approval of this article, and it was unanimous, 7-0. Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Yes, thank you. Mary Ellen Schloss, 50 Manlot Road. I just want a little clarification since some of these terms I get a little confused about. But when you say it's self-funding, are you saying that there's no money whatsoever from the taxpayers that's going into either any of the capital costs or the debt service for this? Are we spending anything on the golf course as taxpayers, or is all of this money coming from the enterprise fund, including the money to borrow?
Go ahead, Tony.
Yes, in this budget, all of the money to fund this budget comes from the users that use the golf course.
Okay, thank you. And I know there was a gentleman that spoke last night asking about, prior years and historical. I don't know whether that's something that will be, that information will be pulled together, and it's something that townspeople could ask for. Who would we go to ask about that?
Selectman Vignani.
So, one of the speakers last night mentioned, I think improperly, that there have been, every year that the golf course has been in a deficit. That's not true, but there have been a few occasions that it has, at which point the town would have to fund to make the budget balance at the end of the year. I spoke with Nancy after last meeting, and we're going to get that information together. There's some question or not whether you can actually repay the town or not, the way that enterprise funds accounting regulations go.
We should reach out to the selectmen to follow up on that? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. There being no one else at the mics. No. Oh, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared approved unanimously. Article 7, Selectman Vignani.
Thank you. I move that the town transfer from available funds in the wastewater enterprise fund receipts the sum of $2,690,270 and $294,950 from the wastewater retained earnings and $672,611 from raise and appropriate for the purpose of funding the waterways treatment plant operation and expenses for the ensuing fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018. In the amount of personal services, $534,119, and other expenses, $3,123,712.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Selectman Harris. Discussion. Selectman Vignani.
Thank you. So wastewater, very similar to the past two enterprise funds. It's self-funded through the taxes or the bills that you pay for your sewer. Some of the major initiatives that the wastewater is going through right now is we have to renew our discharge permit, and right now there's an issue with a high level of copper that we have. So we've come up with a pilot plan right now that's going to reduce that, and that's one of our major initiatives that we're working on. The other one is the plant is old, and we've invested a lot into the equipment lately, and we need to continue to do that so that it's up to date and that it runs reliably. One of our bigger initiatives, which has been going on for decades, is inflow and infiltration, which basically means we need to plug the holes in the system so that we don't process good water with the bad water. I'm always shocked to hear that 1/3 of the water that we process is either seawater or fresh water because of holes in the system. Right now, we've got a big project going on down on Jericho Road that we hope is a big hole in the system. And obviously what happens is, because we process water that we don't want to be processing, we can't add sewer connections to the system. This has caused us to try and partner with Hull. Right now we're working on this to try and take our waste from North Scituate and transfer it to Hull, who has excess capacity. The revenue in this fund is projected to be $3.681 million. The expenses are budgeted at $3.89 million, which creates a loss, which will be funded from the retained earnings, but also will have to address the fees for sewer in the future. The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously in support of this motion.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. DeLacy.
Mr. Moderator, I'll go over a couple of different points that maybe Selectman Yanni didn't cover. I think it's always interesting to hear the ongoing kind of maintenance and balancing issues that the town has for our water systems, and the desire of most citizens to kind of expand our operations. One of the comments that I found was interesting when they spoke to us was that the copper level that we have obviously is at a high level. We're going through this copper reduction rate study, and essentially this study is going to help us achieve what the state now mandates from a copper level in our water that we have, or our waste that we have to essentially send back through the pipes into the ocean. The comments that they made were that the water now actually has to be cleaner than essentially the water that we drink. So if you can imagine, it's a very intensive process that we have to go through, and I think they've done a phenomenal job in finding different ways to kind of achieve that goal. In addition to that, there's several other capital projects that have been recommended, from plant upgrades, sludge handling, and a rehabilitation of 2 or more of the aeration tanks, and the final upgrades to the Sand Hill project. The unanimous vote of the advisory committee was 7-0 in support of this article. Thank you.
Gentleman to my left.
Gordon Price, 48 Manlot Road. Through you, Mr. Moderator, does anyone foresee that there might be a date in the future where North Scituate Business District would be hooked up to the sewer?
Selectman Vignani.
Well, Gordon, I know you come to all of our meetings or watch them on TV. We talk about it a lot. There's two phases left in the project that the project that we started probably a decade ago. One of them is the Tree Street, the other one is North Scituate, and we're always debating which one we're going to do next. The fact of the matter is, right now there is no excess capacity, and the best use for that is what we're working on right now with Hull, but that realistically is years away.
Do we have a sense of how much additional capacity we would have if the arrangement with Cohasset and Hull were to take place?
We wouldn't get any excess. Oh, how much excess capacity? Well, we wouldn't get any because we're not using it there right now.
How much could we add to it? How much could we take on? How much could they? How much of our effluent could they take? For want of a better word.
So it's not going to add to our capacity.
No.
But Kevin just mentioned that there's about 200,000 gallons a day that we could send over to Hull that they would accept, which he just mentioned would do North Scituate and other areas in that vicinity.
Okay, that's what I meant. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Gentleman to my right.
James Hunt, Manlot. What is the extent of the general fund contribution to the wastewater enterprise that's anticipated?
Yep. The amount that goes to the general fund, as I read in the motion, is about $670,000. Now, that comes from the fact that we passed an override, I don't remember when, yeah, probably 99, that repaired some of the equipment there. So there is a bit of taxation that goes into that because of the override that was passed.
And why cannot that be passed to the ratepayers, given that this is a freestanding enterprise?
Because it was passed as an operational override.
Thank you.
There being no one else at the mics, all those in favor of the motion on Article 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Article 8, Selectman Harris.
I move the town transfer from transfer station enterprise receipts the sum of $1,003,581 and $129,305 from transfer station retained earnings for the purpose of funding the landfill and transfer station operations and expenses for the ensuing fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018 as follows. Personal services, $232,746, and other expenses, $900,140.
Moved, seconded, discussion, Selectman Harris.
As in the previous enterprise fund I spoke about, there aren't a lot of operational changes from the previous fiscal year. There's one project that's going on, and that's presented, and it's refurbishing the construction demolition scale that some of you probably see as you drive in. The project calls for complete sandblasting and painting. Some of the board members questioned the price, but I think the board ultimately voted 5-0 in favor of it. Retained earnings are getting a little lower than we'd like. For many years, I remember doing this article, and we'd always have to transfer money from the general fund. Then some years when Al Bankert was in place, he got this enterprise fund to turn around. Now with the markets the way they are, such as glass and bottles, cans, and things like that, our engineer, Sean McCarthy's really been challenged to try to find outlets for these products. So as a result, I think it's in the handout, fees will go back to their original price. Longer.
Yeah, Sean, if you could just give us that last sentence, Mike cut it.
Well, so one of those ways we're going to try to increase retained earnings is returning to the original sticker fee instead of having we had discounted it the past couple of years.
Okay, from the advisory committees, Mr. Anthony Antonello.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Antonello, and I'm a member of the advisory board. I was also the DPW director here in the town of Scituate from 1975 to 2007, so I guess that's why they assigned me a couple of these projects. The one I have right now is a transfer station, and the transfer station is managed by the engineering supervisor, Sean McCarthy, and it has several missions, and it's disposal of household waste, and continue to improve our recycling operation. The day-to-day operations are handled by our staff of 4. We have a foreman, Patrick Kelly. We recycled, this is a report that they gave me. The transfer station disposed of 3,000 tons of household trash and recycled 1,700 tons of plastic, glass, and cardboard in 2017. In addition to household trash and construction debris, the transfer station was responsible for disposal of TVs, 375 propane tanks, 260 tons of scrap metal, and over 800 mattresses. It's a great operation, and it's run very efficiently by your staff. We have a couple of capital projects down there that we plan on doing. One of them is to sandblast and repaint the scale at the facility due to increased hauling costs. and the enterprise fund is not generating sufficient revenue to support its operating costs. The current retained earnings balance after town meeting is $198,000, which is below our policy. We're going to make it up with our stickers. So the transfer station is run very well by the operators and the individuals there. Thank you.
You know, no history.
Yes, we voted to support this article unanimously.
This is the 40th anniversary of the blizzard of 1978, and no history of that event would be complete unless it included this gentleman right here and all the Public Works Department folks. Gentleman to my left.
Ron Swan, 35 Grove Street. A question. Have they found anybody to take the glass yet?
Selectman Harris.
Yes, we have. It's going down to the county transfer station in Rehoboth for $85 a ton. It's to be break even, or we would get a couple dollars per ton for it. But
yeah,
that's one of the markets that's...
It's made quite a mess with the things out in front and limited how much you can take in there, vehicles you can bring in because of the containers out in the front.
We're not alone. Okay. Many other towns are faced with the same situation.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? No. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous. Article 9, Selectman Vignani.
I move that the town transfer from available funds in the water enterprise receipts the sum of $3,785,351 and $218,358 from water retained earnings for the purpose of funding the water division operations and expenses for the ensuing fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018 as follows. Personal services, $961,612. Other expenses, $3,042,097.
It's been moved, seconded, discussion. Selectman Vignani.
Thank you. Again, another enterprise fund that is self-funding. Some of their objectives are what we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years, which is we're finally on the last stage of replacing these very old water pipes that are 75 to 100 years old. The benefit of that is fewer water main breaks and hopefully the reduction of brown water. On top of that, there's a number of wells in town that we're trying to get up and improve the water quality and the quantity that we get out of those wells. We had some capital projects that we're investing in that. The staff itself is training to increase that level of training and licensing that they have. And we're also continuing our effort to inform residents on how to conserve water. As you all know, a couple of years ago, we had some severe drought conditions. The revenue is projected at $4,058,000. The expenses are budgeted at $4,366,000, which, if you do the math, creates a shortfall. We're using retained earnings this year to address that, but in the future, we'll have to address the water rates as well. The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously in support of this motion.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Antonello.
Another one of my DPW projects. The water division is managed by Kevin Cafferty, the DPW superintendent. Also, we have I want to give some of the men that work down there some credit. That's why I'm throwing out their names, because they do an excellent job. The water division is managed by Sean Anderson. The day-to-day operations are handled by a staff of 4, including Eric Langley. And the day-to-day operations are staff of 7, James Costello, And the administration office is led by the senior clerk, Norma Finnegan, who handles all of the administrative staff. This year, what we're doing is that they did some replacement of the carbon in the filter. There's a huge filter there. You have to go in the building to see it, and it's a carbon filter. And the carbon filter, it has to be replaced after so many years. The water passes through the filter, and that's what really purifies your water. And also, they're also redeveloping 3 wells to increase the capacity. They're replacing water meters, and they replaced 7 miles of pre-1935 cast iron water main, and they replaced 54 water surfaces. They do an awful lot of work down there, and they provide very good drinking water for the town. So I just want to throw their names out and congratulate them for their time. Thank you. The advisory board voted unanimously to support this article. Thank you.
All right. There being no further discussion, approval of this motion requires a majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared a unanimous vote. Article 15.
Motion, Article 15, zoning bylaw amendment for recreational marijuana. I move Article 15 as printed in the warrant.
Moved, seconded, discussion, Selectman Canfield.
Article 15 and 16, both proposed bylaw amendments which, taken together, will ban all types of marijuana establishments such as cultivation, distribution, and retail outlets in Scituate. These articles will have no impact on medical marijuana use or sale, nor will it impact legal recreational marijuana use for residents over 21. While our town voted against the legalization of marijuana during the statewide ballot vote, the proposed articles have no impact on the legality of marijuana. Tonight, we should not spend time debating the pros and cons of legalized marijuana. That decision has been made. What we need to talk about is whether or not we want these types of recreational establishments in our community. Last year, we voted to put a moratorium in place until November of this year. Under the newly created regulations, towns have the opportunity to opt out of retail marijuana establishments until December of 2019. If we do not act to ban or limit these legal businesses, must be treated like any other legal business, and we will need to establish zoning and permit them. When local requirements like zoning, hours of operation, and signage are met, the Board of Selectmen will be obligated to enter into a host community agreement with the proposed business that has been licensed by the state. These agreements, which are will be completely up to the Board of Selectmen to negotiate under Mass law, cannot ban establishments. They can implement restrictions allowable under the statutes and may require up to a 3% of gross proceeds to be paid in addition to the sales taxes. To use these funds, however, the town must demonstrate that the costs are, and I'll quote from the statute, reasonably related to the cost imposed on the municipality by the operation of the marijuana establishment. Also, these agreements only last up to 5 years. The board voted unanimously to support Articles 14 and 15, and this is why. Number one, this is a brand new industry. The rules and regulations are untested in the Commonwealth. Our police department has not had adequate time to train to ensure they can properly enforce public safety components of the legislation. Our planning board has not had adequate time to consider zoning implications of recreational establishments. Our public health officials have not had adequate time to prepare for the impact of the newly legal controlled substance that it may have on our community. We are not ready. Second, there is certainly an opportunity for short-term windfall that for the towns that allow marijuana establishments. Most of our neighbors have already banned such businesses. Those who don't will reap the short-term benefits of being one of the few communities which allow recreational businesses. We can debate how much the windfall will be, but the truth is it's completely speculative at this point. Average sales in Colorado and Washington applied to Scituate would indicate about $75,000 in revenue. The chief economist in Quincy has, based on the medical sales that are legal there, estimates that the revenue is about $2.91 per capita. That would be about $53,000 for Scituate. If there aren't many towns allowing sales, the revenue could be much higher. But as I said, this is completely speculative at this point. Whatever the revenue is, it will also decline as the industry matures and more towns are ready to approve retail marijuana. The problem is, if we allow these businesses now, we cannot change our minds later and ban them. The reverse, however, is true. We can ban marijuana sales here now, take precautions to properly zone and train our police and public health officials, and vote to allow such businesses down the road. Yes, we may miss out on some of the short-term economic benefits, but this is our only window of opportunity to tread carefully before allowing non-medical marijuana businesses in our town. 3, finally, the board believes that allowing retail marijuana in Scituate before we are ready will undermine the hard work of our police department, of FACTS, and the school department in reducing dangerous alcohol and marijuana use behavior among our children. There may come a time that we feel that retail marijuana establishments make sense for our community, and we can revisit the ban, but we are not ready now. I urge you to vote to support the board in supporting Articles 15 and 16.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. DeLacy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. This is a fairly controversial article. There's a few things that I just wanted to speak to. One, that in the advisory booklet that you all have in front of you, it tells you that the advisory committee voted in 2 to 5 in favor not to ban the sales of recreational marijuana. Again, this is not anything to do with medical marijuana, just recreationally here locally in Scituate. There was some new information that came to light this week, and essentially yesterday evening we were presented with some additional facts that we decided to re-vote on this article. After re-voting, the article came up as 4 to 3 in favor of banning recreational marijuana. The folks who voted essentially as affirmative and to ban marijuana did it more from a moral compass. The folks who decided to not be in favor of it thought the opportunity from a revenue standpoint was just too large. I think what we've seen in the last 2 days here is that the unanimous view of everyone in this place talks about we're in too much debt. This is a free way to get revenue to the town, albeit with several caveats, right? So for us on the advisory committee, our vote was changed. I think the view from a revenue perspective is real. It's an enormous opportunity. And the vote that we had again finalized was 4 in favor of the ban versus 3 not in favor of the ban. Thank you.
May we hear the report of the Planning Board? Mr. Pritchard.
I'll try to be brief on this. This was a 2-hearing conversation at the Planning Board. The Planning Board held a hearing on February 22nd and then continued that hearing until March 8th. It was a public hearing where we discussed this particular warrant article. The Planning Board voted 2 to 2, 2 in favor and 2 opposed to supporting the article for prohibiting marijuana establishments. It basically fell into a conversation about being prudent and waiting to see how the regulations, how the actual implementation of recreational marijuana establishments happened There's nothing that's driving us to be the first to do this. And as the selectman had mentioned, there's still an opportunity year to year to change our mind at this point. We had 2 members who felt the ban was overly stringent, and it was primarily focused on whether there was a significant revenue opportunity for recreational marijuana. So I will tell you that I was, and this is, I'm representing the 2 members who supported this article, supported this prohibition, and given not only the uncertainty about how this will roll out, but given the sort of pressure on the community and really on the state as a whole, dealing with some of the substance abuse issues, we felt it was prudent, at least 2 of us did, felt it was prudent to wait and see how this develops, and that there was no overriding need to jump into the fray too soon. So that's the planning board report.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
Statistics coming out now.
I hate to ask, but
on the
remind us.
Ron Swan, 35 Grove.
Thanks, Ron.
The statistics coming out on the areas where they have opened these shops and it has become legal. The increase in traffic problems and other abuse problems have increased. And I think that if you let them open, you're going to have an increase in problems and traffic problems and domestic problems and a whole lot of problems. You're opening up Pandora's box. I don't think you're going to make a profit on the deal because you're going to end up spending the money on the other end. Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Schloss, Manlot Road. I just have a question. The article includes cultivation. It seems like cultivation is has different risks associated than actual retail use, and I wondered why cultivation was included and whether there had been some discussion about that. And also, as a follow-up to that, does the cultivation also affect cultivation for medical purposes or just recreational?
To answer the question, Chief Stewart.
This ban would be strictly for the commercial purposes, okay? People would still be allowed to cultivate within their own home a certain amount of plants.
So this would ban a facility that was doing cultivation to grow marijuana for medical purposes?
No, not for medical purposes, no. This would not ban a medical dispensary in Scituate
Not a
either.
dispensary, somebody that was cultivating it for medical.
Not for medical. This doesn't affect medical.
Even cultivation?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
But it would cultivation, if that product was going to be used for recreational? Okay, thank you.
Surely it bans not for recreational, but for retail.
No, the ban is for everything recreational. Cultivation, testing, retail sales, anything recreational.
All right.
Well, Can you read that response into the mic?
Just say that at the microphone, please. Please.
I'll read the whole article. Short person microphone here. All right. So, and it's in your advisory books, I believe. So the zoning. Prohibition on marijuana established to see if the town will amend Section 420 of the zoning bylaw by adding new use category GG marijuana establishments and to add a new Section 492 prohibiting marijuana establishments. Zoning law bylaw Section 4928 in accordance with the Mass General Laws Chapter 94G Section 3A2 all types of marijuana establishments as defined by Mass General Law 94G Section 1 as may otherwise be defined by Massachusetts law or regulation, to include without limitation all marijuana cultivators, marijuana testing facilities, marijuana product manufacturers, marijuana retailers, on-site consumption of marijuana at a marijuana retailer location, and any other types of licensed marijuana-related businesses, and the conducting of any activity for commercial purposes by whichever name used shall be prohibited within the town of Scituate. This prohibition shall not be construed to affect the medical use of marijuana as expressly authorized by the provisions of Chapter 369 of the Acts of 2012 and 105 CMR 725, as the same may amend it from time to time, or to take any action relative thereto.
Lady to my right.
Can I just follow up? Yeah, I don't think that answers my question. I'm asking about the actual cultivation, the agricultural cultivation, the cultivation by a business. Is that prohibited under
Cultivation
this?
by a business for commercial purposes is not allowed under this bylaw.
So that commercial purposes could be for sale for medical use?
No, medical is a different statute. If you are cultivating for a medical purpose, you have a different license and you're under a different statute.
So
that is not affected by this. It's
Okay.
specifically excluded.
Okay, thank you.
Lady to my right.
Heather Santosuaso, 22 Delta Lane. Just for clarification, so a licensed medical dispensary would be able to operate in Scituate?
Sir.
Yes? Yes. Thank you.
Gentleman to my right.
John Whitaker, 594 Country Way. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to our town council, given that the possession, sale, et cetera, of marijuana is still illegal under federal law, can the town of Scituate or any town in Massachusetts actually legally collect fees on the sale of marijuana and then bank them? My understanding that there's a real problem around banking finance for these Massachusetts legal, federal illegal operations. And there may be some problems with banking. What can you tell us about that?
Town council.
The federal government and the states that have allowed marijuana.
Yeah.
The state governments that have allowed the use of marijuana and the federal governments may not all be on the same page at this point. I have also heard that there may be issues with banking. Those haven't been addressed, and all we are speaking to is the state law and what it allows and the zoning prohibition on retail sales in the state that there's before
Honor?
Sir.
This is what bothers me about this possible windfall of revenue to Scituate and the rest. We don't know. We really don't know. Plus, I'd point out, and maybe there is a huge informal market in marijuana.
Jack, could you move just a bit closer?
There is a huge informal market in marijuana going on right now. And it's going to be a lot easier for that informal market to operate, given that Massachusetts has decided it's legal to have marijuana. That market, I believe, is going to overwhelm these fancy, high-priced marijuana shops. Why would you pay big money for marijuana in fancy packaging when you can get it a lot cheaper? You might even get it as a gift from a friend, or you might make a deal. You give me a packet of marijuana and I'll mow your grass for you. I just am a skeptic about all of this. And so I would strongly recommend tonight, please, back the selectman's proposal. And you know what, maybe we're not supposed to talk about this, but think about it. Kids, for crying out loud. What are we doing? Good night.
I'm going to take the latter part of Mr. Whitaker's remarks as a question to the chief on the, I'll call it the transient vendor market. So, Chief.
Yes, this being the legalization of recreational marijuana in Massachusetts will not affect the black market. It hasn't affected it anywhere else. It's just as bad in Colorado as it was before. Economics drives that black market. It's not going to help in Massachusetts any more than opening a casino was going to solve offline betting. It'll always be there.
All right. Let's see now. I'm sorry you've spoken before. I must give the floor to those who have not yet spoken. Gentleman to my left.
Bernie Westerveld, Harborview Road. I grew up in a country where marijuana was legal. My formative years, I could walk into a coffee shop at age 16 and legally buy marijuana. I never did. It was very well known that marijuana was legal. Cocaine and heroin was not. There was a sharp boundary between the two. And nobody in my circle would touch the hard drugs. And the occasional friend would go and buy himself a cigarette in a coffee shop because he knew it was legal, and he knew the prices were reasonable. I'd like to make a case for allowing a shop somewhere in Scituate to legally sell marijuana to keep the trade visible. At this moment, I see 30-second deals going on in the parking lot of the marketplace, Cole Parkway, North Scituate. I see kids meeting each other in the parking lot in 2 cars, shaking hands, exchanging, and they're in and out in 30-second flat. And I have no idea what they're trading. Could be marijuana, could be stronger. As soon as you have a legal shop for marijuana, you have stuff under control. And I'd like to make a motion to make a separate vote on the retail shop of marijuana in this item.
I would need to see that proposed amendment in writing.
I would like to separate the retail shop from the other items in this mode.
Yeah, I think I'd still need to see it in writing so that I can show it to town council. Okay, all you have to do is write it up, and then we'll take it up.
Can you give me a minute?
Of course. And I may allow someone else to speak in the meantime. Gentleman to my right in the back.
James Hunt, Manlot. I promised the town administrator I would have no more questions. I lied. Okay. Right now, in our existing zoning bylaw, medical marijuana dispensaries are permitted by special permit of the planning board only in District C, which is Greenbush. Does the planning board have any idea, and this is for Mr. Pritchard, does the planning board have any idea, should retail marijuana dispensaries be permitted, would there be a similar restriction either as to special permit or dedicated zone? I see you saying
Selectman Cantfield.
I'll defer to the chair of the planning board. Do you want to?
Mr. Pritchard.
I can't speak for the planning board, but Mr. Pritchard.
I think the simple answer is we just don't know. We haven't addressed recreational marijuana at all. It took a long time to address even medical marijuana.
Right.
And as you suggest, that is the right sort of zoning structure for medical marijuana. But it was one of the reasons that we voted to support. At least 2 of us voted to support the ban as proposed here.
All right, thank you.
Speaker to my right.
John Holden, 17 11th Ave. I'm just here because my son somehow overheard that this was on the agenda, the article. And he asked me to speak. He was very upset. He wants you to hear these words. And he said, "Please vote no. What kind of message are you sending to the kids?" That's it. By no, he means obviously carrying the ban forward.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Have you already spoken before
Yes,
on this?
yes.
Okay, so I'll have to cycle through. Bernie, why don't you bring that up? Lady to my left.
Hi, Molly Good, Berkshire Road.
I would like to just express my support for the continued ban on recreational marijuana businesses in Scituate. Many people think this is an issue surrounding individual rights or a way to generate revenue for our town, but it is much more than that. Allowing these shops to reside in our community will only perpetuate the misconception that weed isn't that bad. I teach in a public high school in a city north of here, and I deal with this misconception among my students every day. Yes, it's true, you cannot overdose from smoking weed. But I have seen 5 students taken out on stretchers over the past year due to overdosing on edibles, and an overall increase of students arriving at a school high. Studies have shown that marijuana before the age of 25 causes permanent brain damage, loss of IQ points. It is addictive. It has negative effects on attention, memory, learning, thereby contributing to school failure. It is our job as parents and teachers to educate our kids about these dangers, and I think that if we allow these shops in Scituate, it will only make our jobs more difficult. It is a hard moment in history right now, and we have the power tonight to do right by our kids. No one is disputing that you can smoke marijuana. It is your right. But it is also our right, and quite honestly, our responsibility as a community to make the right decision for our town. Let us follow the example of our many surrounding communities and ban these shops. If not, Scituate will be known as the place to get good weed. Is this how we want our town perceived? If they are allowed, it is likely we will encounter more congestion, traffic, and drivers operating under the influence of which our law enforcement has no way of detecting. We will be putting our own residents at risk. And as far as the increased revenue promised by these shops, we have to ask ourselves at what cost. Tonight is our opportunity to make the right decision while we still have the power to do so. Thank you.
Lady to my right.
Deborah Whitaker, 594 Country Way. I actually also feel I have to give a voice to the children. We were always under the impression growing up that weed wasn't so bad, right? And it's certainly not hardcore. You can't get paranoid, it makes you feel good. Well, unfortunately, 4.5 years ago, we had an individual under the influence in our yard. I would have said to you, I actually thought at first that this person had been in a car accident. They were confused, and I thought perhaps head injury. Called for an ambulance for this person. Within minutes, this person was extremely paranoid and then became so violent he went after my child who was inside our house, in our home, in her playroom. My child still remembers this. And thank God for Scituate's Finest and everybody who came, because really, very, very frightening event. I wouldn't do anything in my power to prevent this from happening to my child again or anybody else's kid. And that, by the way, includes the individual who had used this substance and had lost the ability to understand what he were doing. So I urge you, please, 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 pass this ban. I can only imagine that if we allow shops, this kind of incident is going to recur, and it's going to occur with a great deal more frequency, and maybe next time it will be in your yard.
Lady to my right.
Hi, Becky Malamet, 195 Beaver Dam Road. Just a question for the advisory board. What was the new information you were presented with yesterday that led to the
Mr. DeLacy.
revote?
So basically there was new information from a financial perspective that we were given. Some of the comments that Selectman Canfield mentioned were in terms of Colorado and the average annual sales of dispensaries in Colorado being around $2.5 to $3 million, and having that 3% local excise tax, that equates to $75,000 in revenue for the town, or kind of like $6,000 a month. So we had new information in terms of if that is so little, is it worth it? But in doing more research today specifically, I can tell you that those numbers are very misleading and incorrect, and that's why I'm standing up there to kind of speak to that.
Can I ask a follow-up? So I was going to ask if the previous vote then was based on other information, other data, or no, more speculative?
It was based on separate and separate resource, separate information.
Got it. Thank you.
Lady in front, Anne Marie.
I can just respond to a couple of those things because I was present.
Who are you, mystery guest?
Mystery woman! Hello, I am Anne Marie Galvin. I work for the town of Scituate, coordinating our substance misuse prevention work. I'm a busy lady. And I'm now just going to comment on that previous question because I was participating in the advisory board meeting yesterday. And the content of interest to everyone, I believe, were 3 different points. One was a misunderstanding before among the advisory board members about the tax benefit, which was, according to the previous meeting, perceived to be 9%. It is 3%. The second point was that we would, the community host agreements, and finally, under the community host agreements, were that it was a misunderstanding that if we don't have a ban, that boards can approve, towns can approve on a case-by-case basis, which is not true. If it's a legal business with a license that meets our future planning requirements, it can open. So there was a little bit more to the meeting than just guesstimating the money.
Pardon me. Lady to my left.
Marla Minier.
No. Lady to my left.
Marla Minier, 29 Christopher Lane. I move the question.
I'm not going to accept that motion because previous speaker made a motion to amend. I referred him to town council for a review of the legality of the proposed amendment. It would work an unfairness on the meeting for me to allow this previously offered amendment, which was seconded, to be cut off. So,
what we're going to do is remove the word marijuana retailers
all right.
from the bylaw.
The gentleman's motion is to remove the words marijuana retailers from the bylaw as it appears in line 5 of the first paragraph on page 41. Go to the top, you'll see zoning bylaw section 4928 underlined, and then count down 5 lines. Pardon me, looks like it's, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and then you'll see manufacturers, comma, delete marijuana retailers, comma, and that's the proposed amendment which has been seconded. You may explain your amendment.
As I've stated earlier, I see no danger in a marijuana retail store somewhere on state grounds. The underground selling of marijuana is happening right now. And by having a retail store we can monitor, we allow safer access to marijuana. The law is in place to not allow kids marijuana. The technologies to measure and keep marijuana safe, I can refer to all kinds of little stores in my home country who do it every single day.
I believe that's the presentation. Are there any other speakers solely on the amendment? Solely on the amendment. The chief, and then I'll recognize Mr. DeLacy. Chief Stewart. Bernie, you got to nudge over. Thank you.
I respectfully disagree with the amendment. I strongly suggest we keep the language and the intent of the language intact. The message is very simple here. Marijuana is legal in Massachusetts. Scituate is not ready for it. We are not ready for it. Not yet, not now. We can revisit this down the road.
Gentleman to my left.
Sean DeLacy, 110 Vernon Road.
Sir.
As many of you know here, I'm obviously on the advisory committee. I feel like this article, although controversial, is something that we've been presented with information that's just not accurate. And so I think our job on the advisory committee is to not really answer this from a moral perspective. That's everyone here's job. And I hear the chief. I think maybe we aren't ready for this yet. But what I do want to do is just give you more information from a revenue perspective on this as a business opportunity.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Who's speaking? And please identify the point of order. Sir.
Dennis Marr, 90 Turner Road. This has nothing to do with the amendment, so he should not be talking about this.
Well, your point is legitimate, and you took the words right out of my mouth.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. So
can I speak to it at a further point?
The comments right now to be offered by all speakers relate solely to the advisability or inadvisability of deleting the particular words that were referenced in the proposed amendment.
On that, I did have a comment solely on that.
Speaker to my left.
So Lincoln Heineman, also on the advisory committee, but not in that official capacity. I solely on the amendment. I would agree with the amendment and would second it if it needs it. I think I'm not sure how many package stores we have in town. I am not the expert that there are other folks who in this room are on the relative damage or non-damage that each drug causes or does not cause folks, but I would say anecdotally that I think as a comparison of however many package stores we have in town, and you would compare...
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
One retail
Dennis
store...
Marr, 90 Turner Road. What does a package store have to do with selling marijuana or goods, right?
It's relevant
well,
to this
how
amendment,
about,
I think.
Mr. Moderator?
I do not accept your point of order. The gentleman may argue his point as he wishes. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. I've pretty much made it. Relative specifically to this amendment, I do not, I believe that one retail store, which I highly doubt that we would ever have more than one retail store, would not be this severely damaging business that folks believe. So I would speak in favor of the amendment.
Speaker to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dennis Marr, 90 Turner Road.
Thank you.
This is a very confusing warrant item. There's really no need for any changes to it. We should vote it up and down as was written by the Board of Selectmen and not by the advisory committee who is divided on this issue, Mr. Moderator. We should not be listening to them, but listen to the leaders here who have put this thing together and vote this as one item and not make any changes to it. Thank you very much.
No. Selectman Canfield.
I just want to reiterate to the point of amending the language. I agree that to the points I made originally, that the final point we had was that allowing retail marijuana shops in town would undermine the work that our police and our FACS and our school departments have done in educating our children, if for no other reason.
Speaker to my left, and then the speaker to my right.
I'm Caroline Hine, 69 Hollett Street. The gentleman who made the amendment has some valid points, but I'd like to say that's for another country and probably another time when he was young. The mentality in that country, I'm going to assume, had some education aspect to it. People were very familiar with it. There was a history. There was a lot of thought put into it. And I think what we're suggesting and hearing tonight is that we haven't been able to put that thought into it yet, and we need that. There's another point, and I'm sure Anne Marie Galvin or somebody else could help me out with this one, but I believe the THC content nowadays is much higher than what it was probably at that time. You know, a simple joint versus now you can vape it, you can have it in a baked product. It's a different world, and I think we need to prepare properly for it. So I am not in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Ann Burbine, Pennycrest Road. I move the question on the amendment.
There's been a motion to move the question, which is a motion to terminate debate on the amendment. Requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of terminating debate on the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared unanimous, but one. We now move to a vote on the amendment. The amendment, if it is approved, becomes part of the main motion. The quantum of vote required for adopting the amendment is a majority. All those in favor of approving the amendment and incorporating it into the main motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We now return to debate on the motion as originally offered. Speaker to my right.
Ann Burbine, Pennycrest Road. I move the question.
As there are no other speakers at the microphone, I deem it unnecessary to act on the motion, although I thank the mover for it. Passage of the motion as originally presented requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. So voted and declared a 2/3 vote. If any 7 persons wish to challenge my determination, you may rise now and we will take a counted vote. I see Bernie. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Will the tellers please take their places?
I'm not counting this area. I don't know who is.
All right.
Moderator, question.
Sure.
Am I supposed to be getting the board?
No, I did.
Thank you.
So, Peter, we're not going to have any Chicago numbers, are we? Okay, good. All right. Tellers. Right rear, Chris Mararkey.
40, 40.
40. Right front, Penny Scott Pipes.
31.
3-1. Center, front, and Board of Selectmen and Advisory, Allison Short.
29, 2-9.
2-9. Center, back, Rich Harding.
3-1.
3-1. Center, rear, Jack Manning.
13, 1-3.
Left front, Peter Toppin.
2-5.
2-5. Left rear, Jack Manning.
22, 2-2.
2-2. Thank you. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your voting cards.
I'm sorry, Kathy or Mr. Roddick?
Why do you rise?
The checkers and tellers in the back?
She counted the tellers in the back.
Ah. Okay,
Sorry
so
about that.
let's make this very clear to the meeting what's happening. The checkers in the back were counted and their vote is?
Their vote is yes, 8.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. 8. All right, there we go. All right, let's try again on the no votes. All those opposed, kindly raise your voting cards. We all set? Okay. Right rear, Chris Mararkey.
2.
2. Right front, Penny Scott Pipes.
5.
5. Center front and Board of Selectmen and Advisory, Allison Short.
11, 1-1.
1-1. Center back, Rich Harding.
2.
Center rear, Jack Manning.
0.
Left front, Peter Toppin.
2.
Left rear, Jack Manning.
10-1-0.
And Irene, what have we got from the tellers?
0.
Jack, what was that last number, please?
For which area?
That would have been left rear.
10.
10-1-0. Thank you. All set? By a vote of 199 in favor and 32 against, the motion passes. Yeah, I'll just make this observation. You know, sometimes if you sit in a particular section where you've got leather-lunged neighbors, sometimes it can seem louder in your section than it is in the entire hall. And so it's not unusual for it to seem very loud and for you to want to challenge the vote, and that's your right. But it's also fairly common, in fact, it's happened every time, this will sound immodest, that I called the vote the right way. I mean, 86.1? Come on. Anyway, the Red Sox are winning, I'm told. What's the score, Mr. Town Administrator? Well, there you go.
It's early.
Thank you, Mr. Francona. All right, our next article is 16 on the motion, Selectman Canfield.
Motion article, general bylaw amendment, recreational marijuana. I move Article 16 as printed in the warrant.
It's moved, seconded, discussion, Selectman Canfield.
This article, as I said before, is in concert with Article 15. The Article 15 is the zoning bylaw, and the Article 16 is general bylaw. And on the advice of Town Council, it was recommended to effect a ban. We must approve both. And all of what I said before is still true.
All right. And in that spirit, anybody who comes later, you know. Okay, from the Advisory Committee, Mr. DeLacy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Not much to add after that. I do think that there's a lot of things I have to say that were not presented to any of you on the previous article, and I'm speaking out of term here. But again, the article was essentially voted in favor 4-3 by the Advisory Committee, Article 16.
Do you have a minority report that you wish to offer?
I have a lot of details on revenue, including the $1 million that it can bring to the town that I wasn't allowed to speak to.
Well,
want that minority report? I'll write it. Am I allowed to speak to it now?
Yeah, please.
Sweet. So let me give you a little bit more background. The FACTS program preventative FAQ on Article 15 and 16, talking about the revenue that could be generated from this. In full disclosure, I voted to ban the sale of marijuana in our town recreationally. In further research and in speaking with local and also state officials, the revenue that is predicted or projected from the sale of recreational marijuana is outstanding. What was provided to us, and which Selectman Canfield, maybe in the future, presented, was an average of 512 dispensaries that are in Colorado who generate about $2.5 million annually in revenue from the sale of both medical or recreational marijuana. In the state of Massachusetts, we have 0 recreational. We have 22 medical marijuana dispensaries, and on average, they have about $10 million in revenue. This is something that you can find on mass.gov. It's very public information. The local excise tax that we get from this which would be a hosting community agreement that we would set up as 3%, which is $300,000. In addition to that, in the hosting community agreement, which Mr. Boudreau would typically negotiate with the Board of Selectmen and whoever might come to our town, there's additional 3% hosting tax. So that's 6% in total revenue, which provides $600,000 in revenue to the town, and that's based off of projected sales of $64 million of only recreational medical marijuana, or recreational marijuana. To me, that's way different than the $75,000 that is presented to us. And I just thought for everyone here, it's very important for you to know that those are very low numbers. It's supposed to be projected that we have $1.2 billion in recreational sales by 2021. And I just felt like my responsibility, our responsibility on the advisory committee is not to look at it always from a moral perspective, but is to look at it from our fiscal debt that we have as a town, as well as what this could do in terms of providing additional resources for the chief, et cetera, potentially, maybe even Anne Marie on the facts committee to educate on this issue. So it was only a revenue perspective that I wanted to talk about, not necessarily the more moral side of things. Thank you.
Speaker to my left.
Thank you. May I grab my notes? May I grab my notes?
Oh, please.
So I'm not going to share my big educational speech, or certainly Anne Marie Galvin, 81st Parish Road.
Okay, and no importuning the previous speakers.
Okay. I am truly sorry that the advisory board does not understand the Cannabis Control Commission's municipal guidance and the potential benefits. I have tried to communicate, as everybody here well knows, that's what I do. I communicate facts and share information. There are photocopies of the municipal guidance, which I've emailed to the advisory board, and they're also out front. The 3% tax is for the recreational sales. That's an excise tax to the town. That would be gross income to the town of Scituate, or net income to the town of Scituate. We don't know what the nest egg of that is, what the pot is. We don't know how big, no pun intended, this recreational sales would be, because like the advisory member just mentioned, it hasn't happened yet in Massachusetts. The facts that I attempted to share and that I sourced are actually from Weed Maps, which is the #1 marijuana website, how to find your weed and sales and deals. I go to all sources to get my facts. So the $75,000 projection is based on actuals from the 2 biggest marijuana markets, the only established markets that we have to reference. So I'm not projecting fake numbers. I'm researching, calling Quincy, calling Brockton, finding out what even medical in Massachusetts has received so far. But anyway, it's 3% of a number we don't know. The part that I don't think people are still understanding is the host community agreement. The additional, there's a maximum now under the recreational law, and it's up to 3%. It is between 0 and 3% additional, separate from the excise tax, that communities can recoup for expenses that they incur that are related directly and reasonably to the marijuana business being in their community. It's not extra money. We can't hire another fax coordinator. We can't repave our roads. It has to be directly related. So it is a wash. Furthermore, that maximum 3% is for the first 5 years only. Whoop-de-doo, we're only talking about 3% in excise tax, and I believe we can go back anytime. If we feel like we missed the boat on this, we can hop in anytime. I think that's it. Thank you.
Mr. DeLacy would like the privilege of the floor to jump over the next scheduled speaker and offer a rebuttal. Is there any? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Go ahead, Mr. DeLacy.
I'll be quick. Again, I voted in favor to ban this. My job is to educate. So Nothing against you, Anne Marie. I think you do a phenomenal job. My research and what I've done in speaking with state legislators, lawyers, et cetera, is that the information and the facts that you get from weed maps is based on having 512 dispensaries in the state of Colorado, each producing on average $2.5 to $3 million in revenue. That is pennies. We have 0. They're estimating that we're going to have 20 within the first year to 25 within the first 2 years. And the revenue that's projected is significantly higher. So what happens is it results in a significantly higher revenue stream. And that's my only point, is that it's based off of, right now, medical marijuana sales in the state of Massachusetts, which there's only 47,000 people signed up for, and on average, to those 22 recreational or medical marijuana facilities, they're averaging $10 million in revenue. So if you open up to the 7.5 million population in Massachusetts, obviously the revenue and what they're projecting is significantly higher for those 20 potential retail stores throughout the state. And my whole point is that our goal is fiscal and that we have to be budget hawks some point on our own town. My only point, again, is that we think this could be a significant source of revenue, and it would be naive not to just think about that fact. And that's it.
Gentleman to my left.
Gordon Price, 48 Manlot Road. Knowing a little bit about the cost of prescription drugs, I can guarantee you, sir, that what the insurance carriers are paying for medical marijuana is 5 to 10 times more than what the retail establishments will be charging customers. That's what happens on the market in medical care, and it'll happen with the retail sales of marijuana. The local establishments will not garner those kinds of dollars, I guarantee you. I think we need to pass this, and it bothers me greatly that the advisory committee would have a recommendation based and expect us to accept that based upon cost and money. I think this is an issue that goes far beyond money. I would be very disappointed in this community if we voted this on the basis of the fact that we need another $50,000 or $75,000. Thank you.
Selectman Canfield.
I just want to thank everybody for the thoughtfulness of putting in looking at this situation. And as I said in my initial comments, the problem is it is so speculative right now. It could be a huge windfall. I said that from the onset, but we're just not ready for it. And it is a complicated question, and I would think that it's something we have time to go back and really think about. And as we have more data and as we learn more and we have agreement on what the facts are, then we can revisit this at the town meeting and allow it. But if we don't ban it now, based on speculation, I think that we will do a disservice to our community.
Speaker to my right.
Mr. Moderator, John Whitaker, 594 Country Way. As I said earlier, there is a huge informal market right now. Why do you think that's going to go away? Because someone's going to put expensive marijuana in a fancy package? I mean, realistically, how much marijuana is going to be sold in Scituate? Not much, I don't think. And it bothers me that the advisory committee is trying to give us these numbers based on something that's happening maybe in Colorado. Very sketchy projections of what might be happening in Massachusetts. Remember, we're Scituate. Half of our neighboring communities are schools of fish. Why are people going to come here to buy marijuana? And the bigger question is, why would we want them to? And please don't forget the young people, all the people of Scituate who don't need marijuana. Thank you.
Just so you know, the batting order is the chief and then the speaker to the right. Chief.
Yeah, there's a lot of surrounding towns that are scrambling to put the same ban in place which we want to have in place. All right, towns like Hull and Weymouth and Hingham and Cohasset's trying, Hanover has, Norwell has. Who's going to come to Scituate? They are. People from Scituate aren't going to shop in Scituate. There's still going to be a stigma attached to this. People in Scituate are going to go to Marshfield for the most part. so that when they're walking out, little Susie next door isn't walking in, realizing that they smoke too. All right, so Scituate is not going to have a boon from people in Scituate. Will people from Scituate shop in a store if we open one? Absolutely. But it's not going to be a boon like what we see. Our concern is that we're going to encourage people from out of town, towns that have banned it, to come to the closest facility. And Scituate's apt to be one of those. Now, Marshfield, back in the fall at a special town meeting, their ban failed. Right now, they're planning and zoning for an establishment down there. They have an industrial park. They're going to put it in an industrial park. It's going to be a nondescript building with no signage. Scituate, we don't have an industrial park to hide this. Okay, it's going to be a storefront. Whether it's in Greenbush or North Scituate or Scituate Harbor, it's going to be a storefront. Morning Glories is empty. They might not even have to change the name if they move. But again, we can't hide it. The best thing we can do now, and this is all we're trying to tell you, recreational marijuana is legal in Massachusetts. And is it coming to Scituate? Probably someday. What we're saying is, let's not be the guinea pig here. Let's take a good hard look at how Marshfield makes out. Let's learn from their experiences. Let's see what their tax benefits and other problems were. And then let's make an educated decision. 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the road, the money's still going to be there. If there's a financial benefit, the money's still going to be there.
All right, it's going to be speaker to my right, then the speaker to my left, then the speaker in the back.
Great, thank you.
Please.
Andrea Carson, 10 Pondview. I just have a clarifying question to the gentleman on the advisory council regarding financials. And I think I'm just unclear on this. I know there'll be a 3% tax that the town would get, and then you mentioned another 3%. Could you explain if that 3% is to recoup expenses, or is it an additional 3%?
Mr. DeLacy to answer the question.
So the way that the hosting community agreements are explained, at least in what I read, they need to be established, and there's a maximum, there's a cap of 3% that, like in our example, would be Mr. Boudreau, as well as the Board of Selectmen, negotiating the hosting agreement with the potential retail client. That does need to be used against towards certain expenses, caps, et cetera. You're correct.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
So just so I'm clear, you just said, so it does have to be because of expenses. Is that right?
Well, it has to be contributed toward, it has to basically validate why you're asking for an additional 3%. But yeah, it can be used towards expenses, et cetera.
And if there are no expenses, do you get the 3%?
Maybe Mr. DeLacy can confirm this for me, but it's my understanding at least that that aspect of it is used to allow the community to recoup its expenses generated by having these facilities, and that from time to time the state, I think in the form of the Cannabis Control Commission, will audit your claimed expenses. If I'm wrong, please.
Okay, so just to be clear
say
that it's not new net income.
Correct.
So go back to the only 3%, not 6.
Accurate.
That's accurate. Okay, 3%. Thank you.
Gentleman to my left.
Jerry Kelly, 56 Moorland Road. I'm speaking as a private citizen and as a member of the advisory committee. I'd like to disabuse Mr. Whitaker that the advisory committee does understand this, and we voted 4-3 in favor of this warrant. And I would also like to comment upon Anne Marie Galvin's statement that we members of the advisory committee did not understand the economics. We certainly do. There is a 3% tax, which is an excise tax on recreational marijuana sales. The additional 3%, which is the host community fee, is not free cash. It's only to offset incurred expenses. One last thing. The speculation of $1 million flowing to Scituate is, would be great. That'd be wonderful. It's projected that in 2017, Portland, Oregon, with a population of 618,000 and 9 million tourists, not really Scituate's profile, realized a total tax on recreational marijuana of $5.7 million at a 3% tax.
Speaker to my left.
Thank you. Molly Good, Berkshire Road. I just wanted to say that I can appreciate the education that the advisory board provides. I think it's good information. I'm not going to pretend to understand it. I teach history. The numbers are going right over my head. What I would like to say and bring the conversation back to is that if we're going to consider the benefits of a significant source of revenue, like you mentioned, Mr. DeLacy, I don't think we can let this conversation escape at what cost. So I believe that our vote tonight reflected that this community voting on the moral issue here, and that's our job, as it was explained to me, has spoken. We're not ready. We're trusting the officials that have given us this information, and I thank you for that. But I still think that given all of the information we've been provided with tonight, the benefits do not outweigh the costs.
Lady to my right.
Heather Santos-Wasso, 22 Delta Lane. I support the town and the police on this matter, that the town is not ready for it. However, I do want to make sure that this can be revisited, and I do find it disconcerting that it comes down to revenue, because right now our health care is run by the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies. And when you want to look at addiction in children, look at sports injuries and the children who are put on opiates that get addicted. Marijuana isn't the problem. The misconception is the problem. There's the thought that it's sketchy people smoking in alleyways. Well, if they get it off the street, you know, they don't know how many people it has gone through, if anything's been added to it. And, you know, there's to have it standardized in the production so that you know where it's grown, is there anything added to it, is a plus. I do think the town should consider this, and not from a revenue point of view. Our pharmaceutical companies have a vested interest in us not getting healthy. And I understand that this doesn't affect the medical aspect of this. But when you consider that marijuana is less addictive, less toxic than opiates. When you get started on prescription drugs, it's a slippery slope. You end up taking one to counteract the side effects of another, and you end up in a chemical quagmire. So as far as recreation goes, I would feel much safer in a group of stoners than a group of drunks, just to say. But the point being is that we're able to regulate this. This is one step in the advancement of us taking our health care into our own hands and not have it be about money. Keep in mind, it's less toxic. If you take Tylenol, you're going to damage your liver and your kidneys. Having worked in the pediatric urgent care field and in the field of medicine for 25 years, it's not the marijuana that's the problem. It's the stigma attached to it. I appreciate the fact that this can be revisited at another time. I do want the townspeople to be more open-minded about this, but I do respect the opinions of the police in the town in that we're not ready for it just yet. But keep an open mind to bring this back in the future, because it's time for the town to be progressive and proactive rather than reactive. I can't tell you the damage that's being done to our health right now. And it's not marijuana, it's not the problem. So I support the town and the police on this to pass this and revisit it at another time. Thank you.
Just for your information, the speaking order will be 1, 2, 3.
So I'm next?
Speaker to my left.
Okay, Patrice Metro, 223 Clap Road. I'm speaking personally. As an advisory board member, I voted twice for the prohibition of retail cannabis. And as an individual, that's how I'm going to vote as well. My vote was not primarily moral. My vote has to do with mainly the fact that I don't think the state administrative and legal infrastructure is sufficiently developed, especially given the stance currently of the U.S. Justice Department. And I think Ms. Canfield presented the Board of Selectmen's view as well, and I agree with those. One of the concerns I have too is at the moment it doesn't seem that there are any banks in Massachusetts that are going to deal with the cash from the marijuana businesses. And I know that one of the things that the director of the Colorado Department of Revenue has said is that the state's recreational marijuana market, he oversees the state's recreational marijuana market, and he said this shortage of banking services makes it harder to determine if Colorado pot firms are shipping marijuana to other states or laundering money. And I think there's plenty of other issues that just means that I think the state ought to have its infrastructure. We need to think there's been plenty of conflicting views, conflicting information that's supposedly facts. I just think we could all use a little bit more time to discuss this thoroughly and carefully with all of our citizens.
Speaker to my right.
Ann Burbine, Pennycrest Road. I move the question.
Moving the question is a motion to terminate debate. It requires a 2/3 vote. Then we come to the vote on the motion as originally made by Selectman Canfield. All those in favor of the motion to terminate debate signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared a 2/3 vote. We now come to the main motion, which requires a majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. So voted and declared a majority vote. If 7 persons wish to challenge my determination, you may rise and do so now, and we will take a counted vote. Aha. Okay. Article 17. On the motion, Selectman Harris. Please, if you're voting with your feet and leaving, do so quietly. Thank you. On the motion, Selectman Harris.
Just before I read the motion, I just asked Brad Washburn to put the piece of property that we're talking about up on the overhead projector. I'm sure just about everyone knows what we're talking about, but just in case you don't, this is the medical building that's on the corner right before the Rotary, the original one. The motion to extend the district and Village Business Overlay District. I move to Article 17 as printed in the warrant.
It's been moved, seconded. Discussion, Selectman Harris.
Back in the 1950s, when Scituate created these zoning areas and business districts, this building didn't exist and neither did the road. So it was after that, sometime in the early 60s, a group of doctors approached the Zoning Board of Appeals and asked for a special permit to construct this building for purposes of medical. You know, half a dozen doctors were there for many, many years. They have since moved out. The owners want to include this in the business district. It's that simple. If you ask probably the majority of people, if you walk down Front Street, they'd probably think that this building was part of the business district, but it's not. It's zoned residential with a special permit to house medical doctors. So just asking to include this. The Board of Selectmen thinks it makes all the sense in the world.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Kelly.
I think that Mr. Harris explained very well the extension of the business district and the village business overlay district to include this building. We do not have a medical zone district in town, so this will be zoned for business activities, and the advisory committee supported this 7-0 unanimously.
May we have the report of the Planning Board? Ms. Burbine.
Not here to move the question. Hey, I have a job. Planning Board hereby reports that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40.
Can't hear.
Sorry. The Planning Board hereby reports that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, a public hearing was held on this article on February 22nd, 2018, and continued until March 8, 2018, at which time the public hearing was closed and the board voted unanimously to support passage of the article at the April 9th, 2018 annual town meeting. The changes to the zoning map will allow for the business district and village business overlay district to extend to 7 New Driftway, which is currently in the residential R2 Salt Marsh and Tideland Conservation District. This is the only property north of New Driftway in the Greenbush area, not in the business district. The business district improved with a medical office building and parking lot for decades. The expansion of the business district and village business overlay district harmonizes the zoning for this site with the surrounding area and would allow for potential redevelopment of the site. The Planning Board supports this article. Thank you.
There being no one at the mic's approval of this motion requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. So voted and declared a 2/3 vote. Any 7 persons who wish to challenge my determination may rise now. Article 18.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For general bylaw amendment, expansion of the flu clinic revolving fund to include additional public health vaccinations, I move Article 18 as printed in the warrant.
So moved, seconded, discussion. Chairman Curran.
This article is just to amend a current bylaw that currently exists, Mass General Law, Chapter 44, which addresses the revolving funds that we use to manage our flu vaccinations, and we are expanding that to also involve shingles and pneumonia vaccinations because our health department has seen an increase in those requests.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Kelly.
This attached article just lets Jennifer Keefe's department expand the services that she offers to the population of Scituate. The advisory committee voted unanimously 7-0 in support of this.
Discussion from the floor. There being no one at the mics, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. So voted and declared a unanimous vote. Article 19. On the motion, Selectman Danahy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen seek to indefinitely postpone Article 19.
Motion to indefinitely postpone. It's been seconded. Discussion, Selectman Danahy.
This relates to the Ellis property. The town has been in negotiations with the Office of the Attorney General regarding the status of the property. We were in the process of identifying 12 acres that we thought were sufficient pursuant to our negotiations with the AG's office. Yesterday, I received an email from the AG's office, and I'd like to read it as to explain as to why we are postponing it. It said to our council, as you and I discussed yesterday afternoon, to best assure that Scituate is on the same page as the Attorney General's office and the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, moving forward, we think it would be most productive for Scituate officials to come in and meet with us in person to discuss the steps that the town had previously agreed to take that remain outstanding. Specifically, we think it would be beneficial if the town could identify several parcels or possible parcels that it is considering for mitigation land for the public safety complex. We would request the town bring maps and other information related to the unrestricted nature source, natural source, resource quality, and other relevant factors of the potential mitigation parcels. This information will help to facilitate a fruitful discussion of their potential to satisfy the Energy and Environmental Affairs no net loss policy. We think this will help the town identify an appropriate parcel. In addition, we can also go over the various processes and timing needed to achieve, and in the most expedited manner possible, all outstanding steps regarding both the mitigation parcel and the conservation restriction on the portion of the Ellis estate held by the Conservation Commission. And then they gave us some dates. Possible dates that may work for us include Monday, April 23rd, Tuesday, April 24th in the afternoon, Wednesday, April 25th between 11 and 1, or Friday, April 30th. Please check whether any of these dates work for the town. Given the town's recent personnel changes, we'd request that at least the town administrator, chair of the Board of Selectmen, and our town council be present. From the EEA, we expect the Forest and Land Policy Director and a member of the General Counsel's office to attend, and from the Attorney General's office, it will likely be the Deputy Director of Policy and Government Division, and Carol Ancu, that's her name, if scheduling permits, the Chief of the Environmental Protection Division.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Gilmore.
Good evening, everybody. We were not made aware that this was going to be postponed tonight based on, obviously, the letter from the Attorney General. I think it's best that we agree with this postponement, agrees as well, and that they fare well in their meetings, and we'll maybe revisit this at the special. Thank you.
Discussion. There being no one at the mics, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Oh, that was too right there, huh?
Opposed?
Hold up, there's someone at the mic.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, we did not vote it. Sir, go ahead.
Tom Robotham, 50-man lot.
No, hold on. A couple of members of the Board of Selectmen just said we did vote it. And I'm ruling that we did not. We're not going to cut off anyone's ability to speak. Sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, as our elected officials, could you explain why you didn't respond to the Attorney General in a timely manner?
Now, I'm going to rule that question out of order.
Okay.
That's a question that you can ask at a selectmen's meeting. This relates to either indefinitely postponing or, in the alternative, not postponing and then going ahead and voting it as a conservation restriction.
Oh, okay. Sorry for taking your time.
No, it's your time, not mine. Ma'am?
Heather Santos-Wasso, 22 Delta Lane. As far as Article 19 goes, why can't we just vote to put this, transfer it to conservation and use this as a water source or protect our water source?
The answer to that would be that that would be outside the scope of the article.
But isn't it to transfer the land from the Board of Selectmen to the Conservation Commission?
No mention of water source.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that why can't we vote to transfer this anyway,
Oh, you certainly could.
rather than indefinitely postpone it?
Selectman Danahy.
So this is one of the parcels that we are going to be discussing with them. I think it's a good parcel for what the terms of the negotiations are with the Office of Attorney General.
So this is in
So
regard-
my point is
Through
that,
the moderator, please.
Sorry.
So my point is that this is one of the parcels that they want to take a look at and get further explanation, as well as the other parcels that we've been looking at in conjunction with it. This could be the one, and if that's the case, we'll be bringing it back at the next special in the fall, otherwise, if they feel that it's not adequate, then we will be looking to look at other parcels. Right now, the parcel, based upon apparently a town meeting from 1999, has a water protection restriction on it, and I think the EEA, and I have not spoken with the gentleman directly, has indicated that there is, as a result of that town vote, there may be a conservation restriction on it presently. So we need to find that out further from them as to what they're looking at, and certainly I'm happy to advocate to put this into conservation going forward. But right now, it's a part of our negotiations with the Office of the Attorney General.
So it's part of negotiation as relates to Article 20, the Ellis Estate. It's
No,
a trade-off.
it is a part of an ongoing negotiations regarding the Ellis property.
Right.
Article 20 is another aspect of the negotiations.
Right.
But it's not specifically related to Article 20. It's related to negotiations between the town and the Attorney General that we have a difference of an opinion, but we're negotiating in good faith so that we don't have to spend a lot of time and money of taxpayers' dollars to prove who's right and who's wrong.
Okay, I'm totally confused.
If you want to speak, take the microphone, please.
Okay.
If you're not going to speak,
So,
please
yeah,
yield the
okay.
microphone.
I'm trying to process this, as to why we wouldn't want to transfer it. I don't quite understand that. I'll take you at your word, but, if they're looking at other properties, then why, I just don't understand why we can't put this towards conservation.
As I said, this is the parcel that the board has selected that we think is one that would be sufficient, more than sufficient, it's more acreage, that we believe is the best for protecting our water and everything else. It's a part of the negotiations with the Attorney General's office. Putting it in then takes that off as a part of our negotiations right now. And so when you go into negotiations, you don't all of a sudden whittle down your opportunities to negotiate with the AG's office. So I would submit that right now we should hold off in saying let's just throw it into conservation, because that's taking it off the table for us. And that's why I'm saying to everybody here, since they came up with this and said, we want to meet with you, come into Boston, let's go over all the properties, I would submit to the people here, don't take our negotiations away from us, or limiting them, or whittling them down. This may be the one. That being said, this is an important parcel nonetheless because of the water. And as I said, to my board, whatever's decided with our negotiations, I do see this as something that we're going to protect. And right now, apparently, there is a protection, but I think ultimately we need to find out exactly why the EEA is saying that, because if not, then I think the board's, I personally am going to raise that we bring this back anyways, regardless of whatever we decide for other parcels, because it does protect our water.
Thank you.
Were you waiting, sir? Gentleman to my left.
John Jensen, 38 Gannon Pasture Lane. So you're basically asking us not to vote on this. Is that what your motion is?
Just to postpone it.
Just to postpone it.
Correct.
But we could say we still want to vote on it today anyhow, and then we could decide to put the conservation lien on anyhow today, correct? If we decide?
You can, and what the board is asking is that the people here do not, shall we say, limit our abilities in negotiating with the Attorney General's office.
Understand that, but you just said you believe this should be put into conservation anyhow, correct? Didn't you just state that, to that effect?
I said that personally I think it should because of the water, but given the fact that the Attorney General's office isn't in negotiations with the town, I don't think it makes sense to take the ability of our town when negotiating with the state, when there's a disagreement, to take the ability for us to negotiate in good faith and now say find other property. Now I think this is the best one, but ultimately I don't think it makes sense to do it at this juncture.
Understood. So if we don't vote this conservation in, and we postpone it, and you go off and do your negotiations, and this is not the piece of land that is selected by the state and agreed upon by the board, is there any guarantee that this will come back so we could put a conservation restriction on it?
I am happy to say the next annual town meeting with my board, to raise it with my board, and so that whether the board together says that, that's going to be up to the board as a whole. But I am certainly happy to raise that issue and advocate to put it into conservation to ensure that we protect our water supply.
Thank you.
Gentleman to my right.
James Hunt, Manlot. Of course, we're disappointed that the EEA has not had a chance to review the proposed parcel. It's been a long time, and in a conversation with the Attorney General quite recently, we were dismayed to find out that the EEA had not reviewed this parcel. Unfortunately, EEA's approval is required as part of the agreement with the Attorney General. So to proceed with this without EEA's approval would be foolhardy, and it would be a waste of time and would unnecessarily hinder the Board of Selectmen. This article is properly indefinitely postponed, which effectively kills the article for this town meeting. So I do support the motion to indefinitely postpone.
There being no one else at the mics, approval of this motion requires a majority vote. Late runners this time will not be recognized. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted and declared a majority vote. Article 20, on the motion, Selectman Danahy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to grant to the Wildlands Trust or other conservation trust an appropriate conservation restriction complying with Article 97 of the amendments of the Massachusetts Constitution in perpetuity on land known as the portion of the Ellis Estate currently under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission, a parcel of land situated easterly of Chief Justice Cushing Highway and northerly of Manlot Road, being shown as parcel 12-3-1 on the Town of Scituate's assessor's maps, and also depicted as Lot 1 on a plan of land recorded with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds.
I don't know who's making it.
In Plan Book 15, page 191, excluding therefrom the land under the custody and control of the Town of Scituate School Committee containing approximately 14.2 acres, excluding the land transferred to the Scituate Art Association, Inc., containing approximately 3.8 acres, and excluding therefrom the land being known as the Public Safety Complex, containing approximately 6.02 acres, being a portion of the land described in the deed of Henry W. Keyes, trustee under the will of Joseph Bailey Ellis, to the Town of Scituate through its Conservation Commission dated June 12, 1969, and recorded with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds in Book 3528, page 768, in filing of a Home Rule petition with the General Court for the purposes of authorizing the recording of a conservation restriction over the above described land consistent with the provisions of Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded. Discussion. Selectman Danahy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As you can see up behind me, there is a depiction of the Ellis Estate. The green portion is the portion that is actually currently held by the Conservation Commission. There are two other white parcels depicted here. The smaller of the two happens to be the Public Safety Complex on Chief Justice Cushing Highway. Behind that portion are the remaining 14.2 acres that is under the care and custody and control of the school committee. Now, as I said with the former article, the Attorney General's office and the town have had a dispute over the transfer of the land back from 1970. By way of background, for those people who probably weren't here 2 years ago in the special in 2016, property was originally deeded by this trustee as a part of the estate of the Ellises to the Conservation Commission about 1969. Shortly thereafter, I think it was the following year, 1970, a portion of the conveyance was deeded over to the school committee. There it sat all this way up until about 2000, I believe, 15 or 14, when a portion of that, which is the public safety complex, was voted to be surplus land and used by the town to build its public safety complex. In 1972, an article to the Massachusetts Constitution known as Article 97 was passed. And what that article in general does is that if there's land that's owned by conservation throughout the Commonwealth, that land is to stay in conservation hands, and if you decide to take it out, you have to go through an act of legislature. You have to go to Beacon Hill. So the disagreement between the town and the Attorney General's office is whether or not Article 97 can retroactively apply to a conveyance from Conservation Commission in 1970 to the school committee. That is what is in dispute between the town and the Attorney General's office. Having said that, the board entered into negotiations instead of trying to litigate this issue, to try to determine legally who is right and who is wrong, whether Article 97 from 1972 applies to a conveyance between conservation and the school committee in 1970, and whether or not that should remain in conservation. The town negotiated with the AG's office to resolve it. The resolution with the prior article was to say, why don't we take the 6.2 acres or thereabouts from the public safety complex, find some land that's comparable elsewhere in the town. That was what the prior article was. In addition to that, even though the remaining acreage of 77 acres that's currently under the care and custody and control of the Conservation Commission, which already has the 97 constitutional requirement and restriction on it, the town said we'll go one step further. We'll actually put a conservation restriction on that parcel to ensure in perpetuity it will never be used for anything other than conservation and what it is today. That is what this article is doing. Even though I think Article 97 applies, which means that even if you wanted to use that land, you'd have to go to the legislature and have them rescind it or take a portion of it. We're taking one step further. We're going to ensure for the future that could never happen, that a full-fledged conservation restriction is on the deed going forward. That's what this article is. It's pursuant to the agreement with the AG's office and the town, and that's the reason why we're asking you to support it. Obviously, this was unanimous by my board, and we're asking you to also support it. Thank you.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Gilmore.
I think Selectman Dennehy really outlined that pretty clearly. You can read our comments, which basically reflect that in the book. We, as the Advisory Committee, supported this 7-0, unanimous. Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Andrea Hunt, 66 Manlot Road.
Ma'am.
While I'm in favor of any and all conservation restrictions, as well as this one, I am in favor of this, and very pleased that the Board of Selectmen has come to this decision. I have serious concerns with the request in this article to remove the 14+ acres in the supposed control of the school committee, as well as for the removal of the Art Association land. The Attorney General's office has clearly stated that the Ellis property is in fact conservation land and was deeded for conservation purpose. And all of that land is subject to the protection of conservation laws by the Massachusetts Constitution. We, the people of Scituate, at town meeting in October of 2016, voted to preserve those 14 acres and put forth a petition to the town to transfer that land from the school committee back to the conservation where it had been properly deeded to, and to get a conservation restriction on that 14 acres as well. That passed clearly with a 2/3 vote and was registered with the Registry of Deeds in Plymouth. That vote has been registered with this deed. I would like to have that 14 acres put back into this motion. I feel that the 14 acres was transferred improperly to the school committee back in 1970. It did not seek legislative approval. The Attorney General and Constitution law clearly states that any transfer or conveyance of any parcel in that property is required to seek legislative approval. There have been no careful separations of any parcels on that property except for a very small part across the street that went to legislative approval to be traded to Mr. Livingston for his property across on the other side of Route 3A. But the remaining acreage on the east side of Route 3A, which is about 96 or 97 acres, has never been deeded anything else other than conservation. It remains conservation, and it deserves to have a CR on the entire piece of property. So as much as I would like to see this go through, and I certainly would vote for it if I'm not allowed to make an amendment on that, which I've been told would be ruled out of order, I seriously am asking the Board of Selectmen and the school committee to come together with a decision to release this land so that the vote of October 2016 can be assured and that they will answer to the request of the people of the town, and that we can get a CR restriction on all of the property as it deserves. Thank you.
Members of the meeting, I do want to apprise you of something. Ms. Hunt asked me before the meeting how I would rule on a motion to amend this article by adding properties that are not included in the article as it is written. Let me take a moment to explain to you how scope of the article rulings work. Imagine, if you will, a pie. When you make an amendment, you may slice the pie into lesser pieces. You may not, however, make a bigger pie or bake two pies. Here we have a pie. What Mrs. Hunt's proposed amendment would have done would have been to add properties that were beyond the scope of the article as it was written. I appreciate her courtesy in asking me in advance, because it gave me the opportunity to think about what she was going to propose on this very important subject. I advised Mrs. Hunt that should she make that amendment, that I would rule it out of order as being beyond the scope of the article. She was kind enough to allude to our discussion elliptically, but I wanted you to have the full benefit of what my ruling would have been had such an amendment been offered. Gentleman to my left.
John Jensen, 38 Gannett Pasture. I wholeheartedly agree with the previous speaker. And I would like to remind everybody here on page 3, it says, "You are the legislative body of Scituate." That's us sitting in this room. And 2 years ago, us voted to have the school committee give back that land. I'd like the school committee to tell me why they have not listened to us, the legislature, why you are flouting our decision.
I'm not going to allow the question, and I'll tell you why. That is not the subject matter of this article. I can tell you as a matter of law why that is an action that they haven't taken, and that's because, as you point out, and as I often reference at the beginning of these meetings, this is the legislative branch of government, and as I indicated earlier, probably one of the oldest parliamentary bodies in the world. But under our particular form of government, there are two branches of government, the legislative branch and the executive branch. The executive branch comes to us with requests. We approve them, we disapprove them, and within the scope of the article, we modify them. However, as the legislative body, we cannot order, and I might wish it were otherwise, and the selectmen will laugh at that one because they know it. I might wish it were otherwise, but we as a legislative body cannot order this board or the school committee to do anything at all. And why is that, you may ask? It's called separation of powers. So I will not allow your question.
So I will tell you, I'll tell the school committee, the next time you come looking for an override, you've got to know from me until this is resolved.
Speaker to my right.
Tom Robotham, Manlot. I figure I'll go 0-2 and ask whether we could propose an amendment to this just as they did on the marijuana thing that failed. Could we cut out the language starting on line 8 that says, excluding therefrom the land under the custody and control of the Town of Scituate School Committee containing approximately 14.2 acres. Therefore, since it's within the scope of the article, it should be addressable as something that we can amend.
You know, that's an interesting question. And, you know, I'm on the board of directors of the Mass Moderators Association, and that's a question that we've talked about before. There was a very strong point of view that that sort of amendment should be allowed. But the majority opinion was, and in fact, I think I was the leader of the majority opinion, was that that sort of amendment is not within the scope of the article. Now, why is that? Even though you are deleting some words from the article, the effect of that deletion is to increase the amount of land that would be the subject of the article. And to increase the amount of land that is within the subject matter of the article is clearly beyond the scope of what's before this meeting. So were you to offer that amendment, I would rule it out of order.
Might I respond to that?
Please.
Okay. My understanding, if we take the pie analogy, is that this article states the pie is the entire region, not the green, and saying we're not going to touch that piece that's in the white. Therefore, we are not increasing the size of the pie, we are altering the definition of what they are setting aside and leaving out of our discussions.
Well, let me ask you a rhetorical comment. If you took that language out, would more land be subject or less?
More.
Thank you. You're out of order.
I thought I'd go 0-2.
Speaker to my right. And you're very good-natured, and I thank you.
James Hunt, Manlot. Somewhat scholarly discussion. I appreciate it. My question is simple. There's an access way from Country Way to the Arts Association property, and according to the wording of the article and the sketch map that was provided, that access way will now be on conservation restricted property. Is that a problem?
Selectman Danahy to answer the question.
Sorry, Mr. Hunt. What was your final question? Is that a what?
There's an access way from...
Yeah, I know that. Yep. Is that the fact that it's not a part...
The access way will lie on conservation restricted property. Is that an issue? Is a driveway allowed in a conservation restriction, on a conservation restriction parcel?
It shouldn't be because it's still a way that's been in existence since 18...
It's not a way used as a public way. It's a private driveway.
To the existing structure, which is the Scituate Art Association. So that would not preclude the Scituate Art Association access.
Anybody from conservation here?
Well, no private dialogues. If there's a question that you can answer, please take the microphone. Please. Thank you.
Penny Scott Pipes, Conservation.
I know who you are.
Bates Lane, that's all conservation land up there. Bates Lane runs from one end to the other. Yes, an existing road, driveway, whatever you want to call it, that can be on conservation land. So the Art Society, yes, they can have their roadway in.
Thank you.
All right. There being no one else at the microphones. Because this involves interest in land, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of the motion made by Selectman Danahy signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. So voted and declared a 2/3 vote. If 7 persons wish to rise to challenge my determination, they may do so now. The next article is Article 22. I am going to step aside, and Deputy Moderator Toppin will preside over this particular article.
We used to have a principal here in town named Dan Burke, and Dan Burke made a really big point. He handed out little blue stickers with white letters on them, and it said, "We are Scituate." And that's being proven here tonight. Okay, may the proponent go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, James Hunt, Manlaw Road, I move to indefinitely postpone action under Article 22.
Advisory Committee? Oh, excuse me. I should let him speak to his motion. Yeah. Go ahead, Jim. Make your discussion.
Are you calling me? Given the postponement of Article 19, it is obvious that the Attorney General discussions with the town are ongoing. Therefore, there is no resolved agreement because it is ongoing. Therefore, there is nothing of substance to look into. We will definitely bring this back once the final resolution is made and the substitute parcel is identified. The issue of the Arts Association exception is resolved, and most importantly, the issue of the school committee's refusal to even vote on whether or not to relinquish control, care, custody, and control of the parcel. The absence of even a vote indicates that an investigation is probably necessary. But given the continued involvement of the Attorney General, we feel it is premature.
And for the Selectmen, please.
The board will support the indefinite postponement, and it will address any issue raised by the applicant at any future town meeting. Thank you.
And from the Advisory Committee.
The advisory also supports the indefinite postponement.
Are we ready for the question? I see nobody at the mics. All in favor of indefinite postponement, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes by a 2/3 vote. I won't steal your pen.
Thank you. All right. It looks like the fun is drawing to a conclusion. I know. But, you know, Selectmen, give us another town meeting to do. We'll be happy to come back. All right. I have to say this because as soon as we vote this, you're all going to flee. So I got to catch you now while I still got hold of you. I want to thank each and every one of you very much for the hard work, the perseverance. It's been, for me, I don't get to vote on anything, but I get to listen to all of you, and it's been so interesting. I mean, the debate that you had on marijuana, there were merits expressed on both sides. It was really high-quality debate. So my congratulations to all of you for the quality of your debate, the comradeship, the chivalry, the kindness, the jab when it was needed. It all made for a very interesting story. And I wish you'd all give yourselves a round of applause. I'm going to applaud you. To Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk, the counters, the tellers, please, thank you very much to all of you. You have no idea how hard these folks work, and what a nightmare it was with 2 rooms. I have a World War II field phone that I was going to bring tonight. It's out in my car. You would have heard me cranking it and the bells and all that sort of thing. I didn't bring it in. We didn't need it. Anyway, enough. Let's go on Article 23, the motion.
Mr. Moderator, John Whitaker, 594 Country Way.
Sir.
I am one of the petitioners for Article 23, and I've been designated as the initial spokesperson. Therefore, sir, I move that the town of Scituate vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $10,000 to the South Shore Community Action Council, Incorporated, for services to low-income families and elderly residents in the town of Scituate, or take any other action relative thereto.
So before we get a second on that, I'm just going to ask Mr. Whitaker if he can pin down the funding source as either raise and appropriate or transfer or allocate money in between those different funding sources. Ms. Holt would be very upset with me if I didn't do that.
Did I fail to say to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds?
Oh, I know, but those are different funding mechanisms. So it could be, for example, raise and appropriate $10,000, or raise and appropriate $5,000 and transfer $5,000 from free cash, or any variation thereon.
I would move that we raise and appropriate $10,000.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion, Mr. Whitaker.
Yeah, with us tonight, and a very patient gentleman indeed, is Mr. Jack Cosio, the CFO of the South Shore Community Action Council. And Mr. Cosio is not a resident of the town of Scituate, so I think we need to vote to let him talk.
Unless I hear objection, I grant the gentleman leave to speak. There's no objection. Sir, come on up.
I appreciate the time, especially at this late hour that it happens to be. I am Jack Cocchio, CEO of South Shore Community Action Council. Our home base is in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We're a 501c3 multi-service organization, and our mission is to fight poverty on the South Shore and to improve the quality of life for the inhabitants of the South Shore. Our programs have been sustained by funding federal, state, community, private donations. We've been founded in 1965. We have a long history of assisting the residents of Scituate, and I'd like to just give you a couple of examples of the programs that we have due to the lateness of the hour. But as an example, there are many households that faced a heat or eat dilemma over this past year, and in 2017, our fuel assistance program helped keep 113 households warm by making home heating payments totaling $73,884 to fuel vendors for the residents of Scituate. Our energy conservation program helped 22 households lower their utility bills. More energy efficient through home weatherization, heating system repairs, and in some cases, heating system replacements as well. We made $46,174 in energy efficiency improvements working with local contractors. We also transported 114 elderly or disabled Scituate residents door-to-door in handicap-accessible vehicles from homes to out-of-town medical appointments, totaling a vast number of trips. That's just a snapshot of what we've done, In total, we've assisted 135 Scituate households. That's slightly different than the number that's in the warrant there. It's 135 Scituate households representing 400 residents of all ages, and it totaled $120,058 in expenditures on their behalf. We have concerns about the future gaps at the federal level of funding. We will definitely continue to assist and service the entire South Shore, but especially the Scituate residents in this particular case. I wanted to mention to you also that 93 cents of every single dollar that we spend goes to specific programs, not to administration. Your assistance matters greatly to us, and we appreciate it.
For the Board of Selectmen, Selectman Danahy.
The Board of Selectmen voted against this article 4-0, with the 0 being an abstention. I am in the unenviable position to come up to you and tell you why. Personally, they do really good things. And what they're doing, they should continue, and they should be supported. But there are many other charities, nationally, statewide, locally. We have South Shore Peer Recovery, we have FOSS, we have CORS, we have SHORE, just to name a few. The difficulty that I have with this is, what's the policy? Now, this is a great organization. They're coming to town meeting today. $10,000. What's the policy that you want for the next year, if they come back again, which they probably will, and the next charity that's going to come here? Is it $10,000? Is it $5,000? What is the policy that you, the town, want to do with situations and charities? I also think you have to consider that we are a municipality. We have tax dollars, your dollars, and we are not here to donate money to charities when we have our own needs that are raised that we hear a lot about. And I think, you know, from our perspective, this is a difficult article because I anticipate if this is successful, like other towns, they will be back again next year. Somebody else will be back again next year, and it can morph. And I think from our perspective, there should be a policy in place that if you want to donate money to charities, then what charities do you want to donate to? Do you want local? Do you want state? Or do you want national? And one thing I do want to clarify is that, granted, you know, with the oil, the town doesn't pay for that. But we do pay for their transportation, and last year we paid $31,000 for transportation, and currently, as of now, we've paid $20,000. So we leave that up to you. If there's $10,000, we'll have to find it somewhere in the budget. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I think inherently we have to take a look at what's the policy, because you're setting a precedent, and then you have to ask yourself next year when somebody comes, are we going to give $20,000? Or what amount? And that's the reason why I say to you, it's a difficult position to stand here and say no, but that's the board's position, and that's the reason why we voted the way we did. Thank you.
From the Advisory Committee, Mr. Gilmore.
Yes, I'll try to be brief because I know this is the very last article here. Your advisory committee did take, surprisingly enough, a little different look at this. We voted 5-1 and 1 abstention, 5 in favor, 1 objecting, and 1 abstention. The argument about this being a charity, and if you let a charity come before the town, the floodgates might open, and you'll have the Rotary Club, you'll have this one, you'll have the Red Cross, you'll have everybody coming to us. We considered that. At the same time, the history of this South Shore Community Action Council, Community Council, going back to 1965, which was the start on the war on poverty. They're active in our town. They're taking care of 400 Scituate residents. We're lifting the poorest of the poor up. They're not asking for anything more than a token support, almost an endorsement. Now, we're spending $23,600 on beautification for the town, which we all endorse. We're spending $160,000 roughly for recreation in the town, which we all endorse, which is not a question here. But when you look at the poorest of the poor in this town, the group should consider doing something to help this group out, particularly because of the federal challenges that they are going to face, they are facing, that I know you're all aware of. So that's all I'll say, and we hope you'll support it.
May I speak?
Not just yet. The speaker to my left.
Ellen O'Brien, 12 Meeting House Lane. I'm an example of someone who has used the services of community action.
Marilyn, could you just come a little closer to the mic?
I have used the services of the South Shore Community Action Group. In the last year, I've had eye surgery done in Plymouth. I do not like to drive to Plymouth. And so I get picked up by the South Shore Community Action van, taken down, stay there, they pick me back up and take me home. They have always been on time, their drivers are polite, I pay $5 each way, and I pay to the Council on Aging. It is a wonderful service, and I think they should be funded. Thank you.
All right, there's no one else, no other registered voters. Well, no, I'm wrong. Sir.
Darren Campbell, Acorn Street, 57 Acorn Street. I also don't feel very proud of standing up here and saying that I am not necessarily in favor of this specific allocation at this time, but because I think Selectman Denny, he makes a point that if we're going to do something like this, we might want to think about having some kind of structure or parameters in place first, so that it can be predictable in the future and we can't be favoring one over another or which cause is worthier than what cause. I think it'd be worthwhile to consider if this is something the taxpayers want to do as far as allocating money to charities from taxpayer money. It would be better if we were to just think about what that should look like in general so that there can be as much fairness involved as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Whitaker for the second time.
Your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, and that of town meeting, I would like to ask Jack if he could tell us what other towns have been doing for the South Shore Community Action Council.
What I'll do for you, Mr. Whitaker, is I see no other registered voters at the microphones. What I'll do is I'll give the proponent a minute to sum up, and then we'll bring it to a vote. Would that work for you?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I wanted to mention, first of all, that I'm here for a couple of reasons, not just to ask for money. And I'm actually not asking for a donation. I'm asking for something for services rendered. We gave $120,000 of services to the residents of the town of Scituate. We're looking for $10,000 of the $120,000. It's for services rendered, not a donation. That's very important. Next year, I'd love it if we gave you $200,000 of services for your residents. And I'm not going to ask for a dollar more than the $10,000. $10,000 is a stipend type of amount to say, I'm in it with you. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not going to ever come here and ask for a dollar more. I just want you to give us a vote that says, I'm there with you, I think what you're doing is right, and I support you. That's what we're looking for. The other reason I'm here is because I want more people from Scituate that need our help to come in. When I go around to the towns, and this is something new for us this year, that we've been going to all of our towns as much as possible to let people know so that you'll come and seek our services, because there are a number of people that are in your town that need our services and they don't necessarily know about us. So now hopefully more people will know about South Shore Community Action Council and will come to us, and we won't turn them away. If they're in need, we're going to help them.
Well,
whether you give us $10,000 or not.
My clock was a little slow. Sir, you've had the privilege of the last word, and I think we're ready for a vote. You've heard the motion made by Mr. Whitaker. It's been seconded. The quantum of vote required is a majority. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Oh, man. All right, look. I'm going to try it one more time. We'll see where we are. It's 6 minutes of 11. Yeah, maybe we can get it done before 11. Okay. Shout if you want. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I'm going to say it passed by a majority. But if any 7 persons wish to challenge my vote, you may rise now, and we will bring the tellers out and count it. And I'm willing to bet you I was right, but you know, I might even put $5 on it. Do I see 7 people? No. Okay, the motion passes by a majority vote. Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. It's been moved and seconded. Hey, before we vote on that, before you run away, take your trash with you, please. Otherwise, I'm going to hear from it from these school committee people. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. All those opposed, so voted and declared adjourned. Thank you.
Congratulations.